Welcome to the Rad Dad Redemption Podcast. Here's your hosts, Drew and Dex.
All right, I got numbers flowing on the screen.
I had numbers floating through my head, like Rain Man Matrix style, when I got your 50-50 money at the course.
I'm shocked that envelope came back to me full.
It was not the plan. It was not the plan at all. I didn't realize how much cheese was in it. I had a bunch of designs. And I did tell you, I admittedly was like, don't give this to me. Especially like on the golf course too. Like at least they gave it to me when I checked in. It wasn't like after 18.
Yeah.
After I'd had a couple, they're like, hey, here's all this cash. It's your buddies.
Yeah, drinks on decks.
Don't tell them. But I was going to take it to the casino and try to double it. And I thought it would be a funny video to send you of either me doubling it and then, like, who knows, do it again. Or it'd be just as funny if I put it on black and I just lost it all. But then I did. I took a little sneaky peeky. And you actually won some cheese.
$345, yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
And I got the putter
and I will say, it's probably also going to just end up at the casino anyway.
Yeah. I was just cutting out the middleman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, congrats on your big win.
Yeah, thanks.
And congratulations on being back in the studio.
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's nice.
It's great. It's great. We're always excited to get recording, and we're always very excited when we have a special guest.
Yeah, we did the solo episode, and it was fun.
We had fun.
We had fun.
It was more of the same. It was like I got a lot of people. I got a lot of flack back, like a ton of people, the requisite number of people who listen to our podcast and reach out to me, which is not a ton, but a decent number. I got a lot of flack for fucking the Gondek jokes.
Oh, yeah, I heard Louise.
Yeah, my mother-in-law.
Yeah, when I saw her, it was probably like maybe a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
She was like, why were you guys like going after Gondek so bad? And I was like, well, that was Drew.
What?
Let's not lump me in with this misogyny.
It was both of us. We wrote that. I had to explain it to her. I had to, because she was like, "You're a woman hater," and like, and you also just like shamed this person. You otherized her based on her looks. And although that is all true,
it's also true that she's kind of weird looking.
Well, yeah. But it's within the context of the podcast. These are bits. These are jokes. The whole idea, not that we play characters, because everyone who knows us personally knows that this is just actually, it is us. But we play it up, if that makes sense. If you've ever seen the movie This Is the End, all those dudes, not that we're that famous in that category, but not yet. All those actors, Seth Rogen, Danny McBride, they play fictionalized versions of themselves. It's hyperbole. So I apologize to all of our Gondek listeners. I want to apologize to Jody personally, because I know you listen. I fucking would. Jody, I would. Okay?
That's a huge 180.
Yeah, no, seriously. I want to pump her tires now. Jody Gondek, write us at raddadredemptionpodcast@gmail.com, and we can connect, okay? And I'll show you, paper bag or not. So apologies to any female listener who heard that and was disgusted with my approach there. It was a joke.
All right, stay tuned for the Jody Gondek apology tour episode.
Yeah, hopefully she gets on.
Coming down the hopper. But we've got a way better guest today.
An infinitely better guest. And we're really excited to do this podcast, not only because this gentleman's a close friend of mine, but we have a lot of substance here. We have something that I believe a lot of it I've never heard. I think that anyone who's ever watched a true crime documentary or ever known someone in their life that is a part of law enforcement, like there's a huge other side of these things, and we get to hear it, from the source today. And so I'd like to introduce my father, Murray Hoover. He is retired sergeant with the RCMP, and he's done a lot and seen it all. So welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being on here.
Yeah. And I'm really excited because true crime podcasts are the number one genre of podcasts. So like this is our launch pad. We're taking off. All thanks to you, Murray.
Well, good luck.
Yeah. No, seriously, it'll slide us into. You can just search true crime podcasts and we're going to come up, finally. Yeah. What were people searching before to get us to show up?
Two fat idiots.
Two fat idiots. Dick
and
jokes.
then there's always like a huge list of like every podcast.
Power and politics. Yeah. So, Dad, you're obviously a massive fan of the podcast.
Yes, of course I am.
Oh, thanks, Dad. Have you listened though? You've heard us before?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so, let me ask: were you excited to come on our show?
I was, and I am.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Not without apprehension.
You're a little nervous.
Well, yeah, because I don't trust you fuckers.
I wouldn't either.
Yes.
No, we're gonna be good today. We're gonna be on our best behavior. I don't want to go to jail.
He's retired now.
He's probably still got connections.
Oh, definitely. First question: Can you still, can you still throw down? Can you arrest someone if you need to?
No. It's funny when you leave the RCMP, you go from one side of the counter to the other, and then you get treated as an outsider just instantly.
Really?
Instantly.
Is a citizen's arrest a real thing, or is that like a thing you see on TV?
No, it is a real thing. You don't have the same powers as a. There's a peace officer and then there's a police officer, and they have different powers.
Okay.
And a citizen has powers too, but it's lower on the scale.
Yeah. There's probably a very fine line between citizen's arrest, good Samaritan, and like forcible confinement.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
Nowadays, like if you were you'd have to be pretty well read on like what you are able to do and what you cannot do. Because I assume if you tried to place someone under citizen's arrest and you misstepped, that's harassment. That's assault. That's all these things. Like it's you're under the guise right now.
Oh yeah, and there'd be like 10 people with their phones out videoing it.
Oh yeah.
And you'd potentially hurt someone. I think the biggest thing would be getting hurt. Right? You're like, you see a junkie and you're like, hey, I'm putting you under citizen's arrest, and this guy got fucking nothing to lose.
What, just because he's doing drugs?
No, like
You're
if he was like
Dare?
breaking into cars or something. No, I'm not,
You're like-
I'm not gonna be like, hey, don't do drugs. Like
Dare to resist. I took a course in the 6th grade.
actual cops these days don't even arrest people for doing drugs. Like that's such a like low level on the priority.
What would it have to take for you to try and arrest somebody?
I think it would have to be like other people are in danger, like physically assaulting. I say that, and I saw 2 people get in a fight yesterday, and I was like, not my business.
Hold on, back up.
What? It happened at work, so I don't want to talk about it.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Oh my god!
I don't want to talk about it anymore because it was like a workplace thing.
No way.
It wasn't okay. Now I've talked about it too much, so now I need to clarify. It was like 2 clients that did not know each other in the lobby. Getting into a physical
okay.
argument. I don't want it to seem like my coworkers were fighting in the break room or something.
And they were like big and had tattoos, and you're like, I'm not placing them under citizen's
No, dude,
arrest.
it was 2 elderly people. Like, had to be in their late 60s, early 70s.
Really?
Yeah.
Murray, what would it have to take nowadays for you to get involved and try and place somebody under citizen's arrest?
Yeah, I think Dex hit the nail on the head. It would have to be a threat to life or serious bodily injury. Like I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, like, no, I care about myself more. I don't want to get hurt.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's very, like, shallow and self-centered, but...
Hey, man, you never know. I think you guys had very measured and real responses. I appreciate
Drew,
that.
what would you do? Let's just go
man.
around the horn here.
Fucking bitch cuts in front of me in line. I'm at the self-checkout, and it's 16 items total. And fuck. But he's got 2 things of chicken breast, and he's like, it's 1 item. And I'm like, that's 17 items. He grabs a Kinder Surprise for his kid. He's under arrest. I'm throwing down.
That's in the criminal code for sure.
Yeah, so... but take us back. When did you know that you wanted to arrest people legally? Like that's a good
That's why you got into the job, right? You wanted to just arrest people?
because you
Yeah, that wasn't part of the equation. I mean, it comes with the territory, but that had nothing to do with me joining the RCMP.
well, and obviously I know a little bit about you. You were a logger, you were a fisherman. Like, take us back. What was the catalyst, the synthesis where you're like, you know what, law enforcement, I need to change something. And we really want to hear about that.
Yeah, there was a couple of factors. Probably the biggest factor was I met a policeman that I thought he was a real man's man. He was a great guy. He still is a great guy. And he had time for me. He was friendly, and through him I met some other police officers, and I saw how hard they partied, and I thought that's my group. No, that was part of it. The other part was I was a logger and a fisherman. And it's seasonal work, but it's work forever, but it's cyclic, like all natural resources. It has its ups and its downs, and so you have good years, you have bad years, And the bad years are bad, and the good years are great. But there's no median. It's just all over the map. And it's in the summer, it's get out of bed at 3 a.m. because it's too hot to work later in the day. And in the winter, you're working in snow until it's too hard to find the logs. Then you sit at home and go to rec hockey and drink beer. So I mean, it's a hard way to raise a family. So after I joined, I bumped into a friend of my uncle's actually who said, "How in the hell did you break the mold?" Because it came from a long line of people that did that.
Yeah.
And so it actually was breaking the mold. But I met that individual. That was probably the catalyst, the first thing. And the next thing that happened was when I talked to some of my friends about it, they tossed the gauntlet. They'll never fucking take you.
It was a challenge. No.
Fuck you, they will.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it became a bit of a challenge.
Okay, well, you just touched on it, and that's actually, the next question here. What was it like joining? And what was it like joining in the late 70s, 80s? You said it was from a position of job security. Correct me if I'm wrong. Back then, you guys didn't start out. I still don't think, maybe it's different today, but I still don't think you get paid a lot of money when you're first, doing it. So I'm sure you had some great logging years, and like you said, you had a whole group that you not only you grew up with, and you came from a long line of people in that work, but you had to break this mold, and joining the force is a really big deal. So tell us a bit about that.
Well, I'll start with I applied for the force. I wrote the exam. It's a general knowledge exam and a psych exam, and I passed those. So I was quite excited. I was 19 years old, and the next step is an interview. Well, at the interview, they said, "Yeah, you're not mature enough yet." I was upset. I was devastated. I was doing a man's job, and I had been for several years, so I was devastated by that. So I thought, well, that's it. I'm done with these guys. But, they said reapply in a year. That whole process took a year, so a year later I reapplied. So now I'm 21. It took another year for them to call and say, "Yeah, well, we're going to take you." So it's quite a process, or about was back then. The year I joined the force, I went to training in February. I got off the bus from work. I never said goodbye to anybody. I just got off the bus, never went back. Only the management knew that I was leaving. It was a $10,000 year cut in pay. That was in 1980.
That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money today. But
For instance, so I made, in 1979, 1979, I made $24,000 in 10 months. I joined the Mounted Police, and that year I made $15,000 in 12 months. So it was a big cut in pay.
Mm-hmm. Dex, you're a numbers guy. How much money? And I'm dead serious. Like, for inflation. Because, when you say $24,000, and like that's a salaried employee. No, sorry, that's your logging job that you're making $24,000.
Yeah, that's an hourly wage.
10 months. But like, what are we talking about now in 2024 terms?
I'm just pulling up an inflation adjusted calculator.
Oh wow.
So it was 79, and we're talking about 10 grand. That's over 43 grand today.
43. Wow.
So if you're making 100 grand today, that's like making less than 60.
Yeah.
Taking a job less than 60. That's a big change.
Yeah.
It's huge. And not only that, but when you join the RCMP.
Oh yeah, I had to stop breaking the law.
Goes without saying.
There's a lot of
not that easy to do.
Yeah, it's not overnight. So what else changes? Assume Dex, maybe you don't know, but assume our listeners, like, what happens once you're accepted? Like, life is forever changed.
Yeah, it was a scary time. I was going through with it no matter what. Because I said I was going to give it a whirl, and I really did want to try. Maybe the first thing is you're a young man with long hair, and they cut it all off, and then you get on a plane from Vancouver Island, and you land in Regina in February.
Beautiful.
Yeah, 40 below and windy. And, your first thoughts are, fuck, what have I done?
I think anytime anyone ever goes to Regina, they have those thoughts.
Even if you're just passing through, you're like, oh God.
Well, no, and then it gets worse for a while too, right? Because you go there, you don't know anybody, you're standing in a line. It's like going to prison, or I imagine.
Did they shave your head right fucking there? Like
no. I mean, we all showed up with short hair because we knew it was coming. They did cut it shorter, but
okay.
Anyway, haircuts were mandatory every 2 weeks.
No way.
Yeah, they had their own barbers. Yeah, so you couldn't tell them what you wanted. They just did
just the high and tight.
Yeah, But you stand in line, and then they're passing you. Here's a blanket. Here's a jacket. Here's a pair of boots. Like this stuff you see in Army enlistment movies. It's very, 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 very much like that. And then you go to a dormitory, and you're sharing a room with 31 other guys. So there's 32 of you. Chances are you're not going to like half of them.
Fair enough.
Chances are more than half are not going to like me. But so it was a big adjustment. I was married. Most of the guys weren't. And at 22, I wasn't the oldest guy, but I certainly wasn't the youngest.
Okay.
Yeah.
And going back to like when you got accepted, they made you take the year to kind of think about it and come back and reapply. Is that like a regular thing that they would do to some young guys? Like almost like a little bit of a test. Like if he's really into this, he'll come back and do it, or is that more of an individualized thing?
So, time and space for that, right? So, at that time, if you had a university degree, you got in faster. If you were bilingual, you got in faster. If you were Indigenous, you got in faster. If you're a woman, you got in faster. If you're just a regular white guy, they would pull those kind of tactics. The other thing that came into play was I came from a town of just over 12,000 people, and the year that I applied, the year that I got in, there were 62 applicants, and only 2 of us got in.
Oh, wow.
My boss's son and me.
And you're saying 31 other people, so 32 total. Or I don't want to say applicants, but what would you call that? Pre-service
cadets,
officers, cadets. There you go. There's a fucking word for that. What do you call that?
You were looking at me. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, Dex, come on, you're a cadet, club cadet. Now, but you guys are from all over the country.
Yes.
So every RCMP officer in any province or territory, when they get in, the first step is to come to Regina, and that's your class. That's your graduating group.
Yeah. So the way it's done now is different from the way it was done then. The way when I joined was I went into the detachment and I signed on the dotted line, and I was a policeman right then and there, and I hadn't had any training.
Freeze!
Exactly. Yeah.
You're on the other side.
I didn't have a gun. I didn't have a badge.
Citizen's arrest.
Didn't have handcuffs. But I was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police from day one. Now when you go to training, you go through training for 6 months, and at the end of the 6 months, if they like you, they offer you a job.
Okay, so there's a bit of a commitment there.
Yeah. So we were paid from the day we got there. They're given a nominal fee or payment of some sort now. I don't know what it is, but it certainly wasn't. It certainly isn't a much of a wage. It's like going to university and getting a little bit of money for it, and then if you did well, you get offered a job.
Okay, a little bit of a stipend.
Yeah.
So it's culture shock. You just grew up in Vancouver Island your whole life, and now you're in Regina, the butthole of Canada, freezing cold, and you're in Depot. What is Depot like?
Well, you know the term melting pot?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a melting pot because you see everything there. There was, in my troop, there were guys from every province. We were classified as a bilingual troop in that we had bilingual members in with us.
Okay.
Instead, there were French only troops, there were English only troops, there were bilingual troops. So I think we had 6 Frenchmen that couldn't speak English but said they could.
Perfect.
Yeah, they didn't like me.
Yeah. I have to imagine that, if someone says they speak French, just like you touched on it before, not that it's a diversity hire, but especially with
it was then.
Okay, Royal Canadian, like you got to get them in there. So if they speak both languages, sure. But then when push came to shove, like this guy doesn't know what I'm saying. And you're in training with each other. Like what?
Well, more to the point, I think, Drew, is they used it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, for instance, if they failed a law exam in English, they got to write it again in French. Same question, it's just in French.
Interesting.
Yeah. Swim class. We're getting off on a tangent here. I'm going to sound like I'm
That's
race.
what
That's what this podcast is.
Swimming class. I could swim. I wasn't a strong swimmer, but I could swim. One of the guys in my troop couldn't swim a stroke. Not at all. At the end of training, he could swim 1 lap, and we got the same mark.
He had to swim in French.
There you go.
Yeah.
Pea soup, as it were.
What are some highlights? Because I want to get into your career. I want to know what it's like when you graduate Depot. And again, something that you might not know about RCMP officers is once they finish, you don't get a say in where you go. It's very
that was going to be my big question. Like, my understanding is it's very like hierarchical, and when you graduate, I presume you get like whatever posting they have, and it's probably not
So you don't
not
have
an awesome spot.
you get a staffing interview while you're in training towards the end of the training. Somewhere's around a month ago or so, and then about 2 weeks or maybe 1 week before you go, then you find out where you're being sent to. But they don't guarantee you anything, and that whole staffing process is cyclic. So for years, you would never go back to your home province. Then for a while, you went back to your home province. Now you can go back to your home province quite easily. But we couldn't when I graduated. So I personally wanted to stay in Western Canada because I had this affinity to the coast, and I wanted to be able to have access to it, family and the climate and the recreation that it offered. But they weren't going to send me to British Columbia. But I was going to make British Columbia one of my choices anyways. But I knew better than to make it my first choice. Any of the guys that made their home province their first choice got their third choice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck you.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I was deathly afraid of spending my career in Saskatchewan.
Especially after getting there for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, well, maybe Manitoba. They got lots of water. And then I thought, well, and maybe Alberta. And then BC. So I said I'd like to go to Manitoba, Alberta, or British Columbia. And they said, okay. And we talked for a while. And then the interview was over. And as I was leaving, I said, actually, can I change the order and say I'd rather go to Alberta, then Manitoba, then BC? And the staffing officer said, why? And I said, well, I don't know. It's closer to BC. Well, where do you want to go? I said, I don't really care. And I think he was impressed by that I didn't have a demand, and I wasn't adamant about anything. So, a lot of times they would send guys to some of the less desirable places because that's the only way they could staff them. They sent me to High River, which is like one of the plum postings in all of Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, you're close to a big city.
Yeah, the foothills, and at that time it was only 4,500 people, pretty low crime. I think it had a lot to do with me being unassuming. I don't know, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, hold up, back up. So you're coming out of depot, and I had this experience, and I feel like anyone who goes through any sort of professional training must have this experience. There's a big difference between like what you learn during school and then you finally land in a professional capacity, and you're like, I didn't learn a thing. I have no idea what this job is. So your experience in depot, I remember seeing pictures of you, like you're very fit. You've obviously got the requisite training to become an officer. What was it like landing in High River? What are the first couple months on the job? Well, how are you prepared for them?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd like to preface this with is I said to myself leaving depot after I graduated, if the job is anything like depot, I quit.
Really?
Yeah, because it's just ultra competitive. You got along with the guys, but there was always shit going on. It was just, no, it just wasn't for me. I mean, we had a good times. We're a bunch of young guys.
The Regina nightlife.
Yeah, well, I was married.
In Coyabla. Oh, okay, yeah.
So, I mean, the 3 clubs are where the other guys went to.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I wouldn't say I was a homebody. I'd go to there was a bar right on campus. So starting out, you're assigned a trainer, and you shadow him, and it's a 6-month program. It's called the Recruit Field Training Program, and there's a series of exams and things you have to do in that 6 months. I got, I think, 4 or 5 days with a trainer.
Of the 6 months?
No, he was my trainer for 6 months, but I only worked with him for 4 or 5 days.
Oh, wow.
And then it's like, here's the keys, lock the door when you leave.
Oh, trial by fire.
Yep.
Intentional, obviously.
Nope.
Really?
No, they're just at that time they were short. No, they weren't short staffed. That's how they managed. That's how they saved money. They weren't open 24 hours. You were on call without getting paid for it. They just gambled that things might not happen.
Hopefully, there's
nothing crazy is going to go down in High River.
Crime. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's cheaper to pay if something does happen than to pay when it doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
So, like my very first shift was I went to a fatality.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So that was kind of scary to me. I mean, I knew it was coming. I just didn't think it was going to be the first day.
First day, yeah. Especially in a town of that size.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
Well, I got my first
1 in 4,500.
I got my first. Yeah.
I guess.
Well,
then you have to divide it across like days of the year. And then, come on.
All right.
Well, what's interesting about this, I couldn't believe the argument is over the radio as we're going to this call. There's a guy dead, or just one guy. I think there's 2 guys. I don't remember so long ago. But we're going to this call, and it was on this highway, And the argument was, which side of the highway are they on? Because the highway is the dividing line. So who's going to have to do the investigation?
Oh, like it could literally be like Okotoks's
but it was
show?
one car from one side and one car from the other. They hit, and then they ended up.
Man.
Ended up on our side.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you're like, I'm going to see a dead body. This is my first, what we'd call it a case, my first dispatch, and these guys are arguing over who has to deal with it.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
We're there, and we're dealing with this, and then I look around, and everybody else is off doing something. It's just me and the dead guy. It was unnerving.
Wasn't a great conversation.
Yeah. Poked him with a stick. Yeah, he's still dead, guys. So what's your rank at this time? What is anybody coming out first posting? Your
Recruit.
Still recruit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the other thing. They weren't always called cadets, but they're cadets or recruits in training. But you're a recruit until you pass your 6 months field training.
Like even to the average Joe, like I imagine you had to roll up to the odd bar fight at the Roadhouse, and you're like, you come out of the squad car and you're like, pull out your badge. I'm recruit Hoover. Like it's not gonna.
They wouldn't know.
Okay. No. You're not starting with that.
No, there's no N on the back of your car.
You don't have to wear a new driver.
No.
Yeah, he's got a different colored vest. Oh man. Okay. Yeah, I guess that would be ridiculous. That's a stupid fucking question. So you're a recruit, and then how's High River? What happens in High River? This is the start of your career. You're starting to figure out how to be a policeman, and you guys start a family. What are some notable highlights from that posting? Because you guys, how long were you in High River?
8 years.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun there, and it's kind of a two-pronged or double-edged, I guess, a better term. It was slow enough that you had all the time in the world to take your time with an investigation, but it was also slow enough that you never got any serious stuff, so you didn't learn how to do some of the good stuff. So you learned how, if something happened in a neighborhood, you had the time to knock on everybody's door. So that's a lost art today. You'd knock on everybody's door in the whole neighborhood in the event that somebody saw something. And even if they didn't, it did a lot for community reassurance. Mm-hmm. But that said, anything serious that happened, the senior guys would handle it. And so you would kind of be always on the fringe. And there was a couple of pretty serious homicides in the early 80s. And, I got to work on, some roadblocks.
That was one of our questions. What's the detail like when you're and Dex, you said it, it's this hierarchical organization. What is the detail of a recruit, a constable, a beginner cop in that type of town?
Yeah.
What's the work like?
It can be, you could be responding to a homicide, but then the investigation gets taken away after you've called somebody else in. You work your way up. When the call comes in, it's yours until they decide you can't handle it, which is pretty frequently because they just give the more serious stuff to more experienced guys, always. In those homicide investigations, I saw how those guys worked, and I thought, I want to do that someday. That's what I want to do. It's the whole managing a big team, the whole putting a puzzle together, the whole importance of it. That would really appeal to me. So what happened was they were going to move me, and they offered me a bunch of places. I said, I don't want to go to any of those places. I want to end up in plain clothes. So it seems to me, everybody that's got my amount of service knows more than me. So I need to go to some place where it's busy.
Learn
something. Yeah. But the time in High River was fantastic. We loved it there. We built our first house. We had our first 2 kids. But it went from the importance of being a policeman to the importance of being on the hockey team, and the importance of playing ball, and the importance of your buddies, which happens in small towns, right? Especially for young guys.
Yeah.
So I started to be less effective. I never was a ticket writer. I just hated it.
Was that something that obviously, everyone's got to share the workload, but like you're on the highway writing tickets, and you're like, this is not what I thought I was going to be doing, or this is not what I enjoy. Well,
not long after I got off recruit field training, I had a staffing interview, and they said, we need somebody in highway patrol. And I said, I'm not really interested in highway patrol. I'd like to hone my skills as an investigator first. And they said, well, we appreciate that, but we really need somebody. So you go to highway patrol, and in 6 months, if you really still want to get off, then we'll move you off. So I went to Highway Patrol, and the guy that made the deal with me went to BC. So,
Oh, no way.
so I stayed on Highway Patrol for 2 years. And then I went into the next staffing officer, and I said, I've been on Highway Patrol, and I want to get off. He said, how long have you been on? I said, 2 years and 2 days today, sir. He said, okay, Hoover, we'll get you off. Because, going to work on Highway Patrol, you're your own boss. You go do your own thing. The freedom was great, but nobody's ever happy to talk to you.
No.
What a depressing job.
Nobody's excited to see you on the highway.
You ever get tickets? You a ticket guy?
It's been a minute since I've been pulled over. Like, I want to say at least 5 or 6 years. I get a lot of the photo radars, but
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's my question, and I want to know, Dad, like, when you're getting a ticket or when you're giving a ticket, maybe the other side, is it objective? Is it by the book? Or did you ever have someone that were like, this guy's a fucking piece of work? He's getting he's got a tail light out. Psh, you know?
No, not that. But there's a certain amount of discretion. Like, I'm not sure what the fine structure is like now, but I think it's the same. The amounts are different, but it goes out in increments according to your speed.
yeah.
So
I actually remember the first ever speeding ticket I got. I was 16, had my first car, and I was ripping down the highway at 25 kilometers over and got pulled over. And the cop came up, and he's like, or the RCMP officer, and he was like, I got you to go on 25 over. It would be this much and this many demerits. He's like, what I'm going to do for you is I'll knock it down to 14. That's this much and 0 demerits. And I was like, thanks. But I was like, you could have just let me go too. But,
Yeah. No,
but so, yeah, I felt that myself, is that discretion.
absolutely. That's the discretion I was talking about. But I also found if I let somebody go, if I said, you know what, I'm not going to write you a ticket today. I had a hard time writing a ticket the rest of the day. It's not fair to the rest of the people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you give one guy a break, you go, well, I guess everybody gets a break today.
I gave that guy a break. So the opposite, the inverse function true, where you get like a real, a serious traffic safety violation. You come down hard on the guy and you're like, all right, today we're giving tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And not your passion, not your calling.
No, I didn't like it. No.
So then what is, what's a guy in that position? What did you have to do in order to get that experience? Where does your career take you next?
So I went back to regular duties and did that for a while. And like I said, they were going to move me, and they gave me a list. I think it was about 16 places, like Lac La Biche and Cold Lake and High Level, and all those places are you're going to be there a while. I thought, well, why don't I go to some place where there's really serious work, but it's only for a short period of time? So they said, well, how about Assumption, which is largely regarded as the worst place in Alberta.
So can I ask? Sorry to interject. Is there do they give you the stats, or do you just know that being with the mounted police, this is the worst municipality, this type of stuff goes on there, or when they're shopping it to you, they're like these are the types of crimes, this is the type of.
They don't do that, but at that time in the that'd be the late 80s, I guess. Then I think there was only 1,700 RCMP officers in Alberta. So through courses and training and hockey tournaments and stuff, most of maybe not most of that 1,700, but I would have known probably 20 guys that had been there.
You're connected. You've heard tell.
Yeah. You hear
right?
the stories, but you also know guys that were there.
Okay.
So I had a pretty good idea what I was getting into. Not 100%.
So Assumption's reputation is terrible.
Yeah.
And where is Assumption? Tell the listeners. Tell Dex.
Yeah, actually, I've lived in Alberta my whole life. Never heard of this place.
Okay, well, it's northwest of High Level.
Okay.
So it's just south of the territories. Do you know where Rainbow Lake is?
I'm familiar, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, it's up in that area.
Okay.
It's a Denatah Reserve. At that time, the population was 1,200. There was 4 cops, and we had 1,200 or 1,300 prisoners a year. It was nuts.
And
Sorry, what?
yeah, that's sounds like everybody in town's going to jail.
It'd be the same 300 or 400 over and
Okay,
over, right?
yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Well, that's not even fair. The same couple hundred. And most of that would be the same 50.
So a lot of repeat offenders, and is this a place where there's just drug and alcohol problems? Is that kind of what you're dealing with, or
It was all alcohol and violence related to alcoholism or alcohol consumption. When I was there, I don't know what the drug use would be like there now, but it was brutal. It was really, the stuff that they would do was crazy.
Tell us about Assumption. Yeah, pins and needles.
Okay, we showed up there. It was raining, and the moving truck came in, and they
And
said,
your wife is pumped.
"Oh yeah, she's so excited." I told her, "Don't wear your Reeboks to the store; it's muddy. Wear those gum boots you got for Mother's Day." And she didn't listen. Anyways, they pretty much just dumped all the stuff in the living room and said, "It's muddy. We won't get up the hill if we don't leave now." So we had to do all our unpacking. She was scheduled to go to the coast with your older brother and sister, and I was going to stay there and work for I forget how many weeks, and then go join her in the coast. Second or third day, got my first homicide investigation. My investigation, wasn't taken away from me.
No one's in the office tapping you on the shoulder. This one's mine, Hoover.
Yeah, no, it's like go get it done, right? So, yeah, I mean,
do you remember your first murder investigation?
Oh, of course, yeah. But I sent a note home to Shannon. I said, "Pack me a lunch and some clothes. I got to go to Edmonton with the body." So yeah, it was a wild one.
And it just continued like that, like the pace of work.
Yeah, it was nuts. So I went to Edmonton for the autopsy, came back and didn't finish up the investigation, but got things kind of in order. And I had a day off, so I was going to go to High Level and play golf with Rod, my buddy Rod, who was stationed there. And Corporal was going to give me a ride. So the girl that was murdered, it was her funeral that day. And her brother, who was a badass in jail, had gotten leave from the jail to come to his sister's funeral. So the corporal didn't come. So I'm in my golf clothes, and so I walk over to the cell block, which is a separate building. You remember the cell block in Desmarais, Wabasca?
The original one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's the building. It used to be an Assumption.
It's a standard issue.
Yeah, no.
It's a literal building.
Oh, yeah. No,
fuck.
it's got a name carved in it from Assumption.
No way.
Yeah. Anyway, so
That's crazy.
I walk up the steps, and I hear the doors open, and here's this badass sitting at the guard's desk with the door open, no handcuffs on, nothing. He's just sitting there. And I hear, "Help me. And then I hear thump, thump, thump coming up the stairs, and here comes Arthur Tacumba, this huge native fella who's a guard, and he's got a knife. I'm in my golf clothes. I'm going, fuck, I've had a murder investigation, now I'm going to die, like day 4. And I think he's trying to stab me, but he's trying to give me the knife because one of the prisoners had hung himself, and the corporal was holding him up from outside and needed a knife to cut the shirt that he hung himself with. Interesting, though, the prisoner that hung himself was the guard the night before. He went home, got drunk, beat up his wife, and then now was a prisoner.
Oh my goodness.
This is all. Oh, and there was a flood that divided the whole reserve in half.
Holy
We had
shit.
to use a boat to get to the other side where we had a truck park. That's my first week in Assumption.
And you're like, I love being an RCMP officer.
Oh, man, the flies were so bad, and it doesn't even get dark at night. You're so far north.
Yeah.
Were you able to at that time? And I'm assuming the answer is no. But like this was a means to an end. Like you're in this extremely volatile. Like no one just moves to Assumption or whatever analog you move to. It's to take the next step in your career. So did that kind of keep you on track, keep you focused?
It did. I was lucky enough that through my entire career, I orchestrated where I was going to go next. But I tempered the good requests with the I'm willing to do the bad first. So I was never turned down. It was a 2-year post for married guys. We were the only married couple.
Okay. Did some people? So you were sitting in High River. You saw this opportunity to go up there, and it's like, go, get a lot of experience really fast. Did and you saw that as an opportunity. Do some people, when presented with that, they're thinking more like, I'd rather go somewhere where it's a little more quiet, and I just want to sit back. Like, is there, or did you get the impression that a lot of people had the same mindset you did, or is it maybe a divide?
So I think the world is split on that, right? There's people that are driven, there's people that aren't, and I was driven. I know a lot of guys that say for first posting was Okotoks, and they never went north of Calgary, spent their entire 30 years in the area, right? But that wasn't going to, that presents a certain quality of life, but that wasn't going to satisfy my desire to get to where I wanted to be. They were a constable doing uniform police work when they started, and they were a constable doing uniform police work when they finished. I never expected to rise really high in the force, but I wanted the better jobs.
Man, I'm still like reeling. So you're in Assumption. It's absolutely bonkers. you're getting that experience by the bucket load. Like, and it's tough. It's tough even interviewing you because I bet you we could just do like case by case up there. Like you probably dealt with some intense stuff, but once you get enough under your belt, what's the next move? Where does that take you, and how does that happen in your career?
So leaving Assumption was different for me than for most guys. But when you leave a place like Assumption, you ask for a good spot, and they do their best to give you a good spot.
They owe you.
Yeah, they do. But most guys ask for Sylvan Lake, someplace where they're going to have a nice quality of life. I was going to hold out for some kind of a plainclothes position, but I got moved out under a bit of a cloud and some less than illustrious circumstances, and had to go in a hurry. So I had to take just pretty much anything that was open. I was in my staffing interview, and they said, well, go around the corner and look on the board and see what's open. So I did, and Fort Saskatchewan was open, and a friend of mine was stationed there, Greg Parrott. So I said, I'll go to Fort Saskatchewan. They said, okay, we'll send you there. And it's a nice spot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The world's best spot, some might say.
Yes. Well, we had our best son born there.
It was going to be the capital of Alberta.
Wait, Joe was born in Fort Saskatchewan?
Fuck! Oh, it was right there. I can't even say I set that up, but that was... Okay. So you transfer to Fort Saskatchewan. It's available. Assumption is this like wild nightmare, and it ends, and you get to Fort Saskatchewan. You're so elated by arriving in civilization. You create another life.
No, we went to the store every day because in Assumption...
Yeah, I imagine there's not much up there.
No, so, yeah, we would go to Safeway every day.
That was like a hit. That was like a thing. You want to go to the grocery store?
Let's go get something at the grocery store.
Wow. Yeah. So what's that like, and what's in Fort Saskatchewan? What's your detail there? How does that go?
It had its ups and downs. We had a lot of fun there. We made a lot of friends. We have a lot of friends from Fort Saskatchewan still that we associate with. So it was really good in those terms, and it was good for my career. But I had a really bad boss, and I had a really good boss, and but I had all this experience from Assumption, and I had the right amount of service. So Fort Saskatchewan had a one-person plainclothes unit, and so when it became available, I didn't even ask for it. They just said, "Will you do it? Because you're the guy."
And can you elaborate a bit on that when you say plainclothes? Like, I mean, obviously you're not wearing uniform, but you're primarily investigating. What is that detail?
It's all investigations, and the more serious or complex investigations.
Okay. And is it a breath of fresh air because you're coming from a place where you're dealing with, several homicides and several violent acts, and Fort Saskatchewan's a little slower pace?
It is. We still had homicides, and we still had those types of investigations, but you had resources to do it. In the north, you didn't have any resources. It was you and maybe one other guy. But in Fort Saskatchewan, you could get your forensic identification specialists and emergency response teams, a dog man, other members to help.
So that must have been exciting.
It was, yeah. Yeah, it was good. And straight days, weekends off, which was something I'd never had.
Yeah, that's probably not common in that line of work. And when you get to like a plainclothes position, are you kind of like the senior member? Is it kind of separate from what everybody else is doing? What's that in the hierarchy?
A lot of autonomy.
Yeah.
So I had a uniform boss that I reported to. He had some plainclothes experience, so he was a pretty good resource. But pretty much they relied on me, and I did a lot of drug work there, and we're having problems getting convictions because the warrants weren't standing up. So I took it upon myself to learn how to write warrants by reaching out to some guys that I knew. And then one day my boss came to me and said, "Where did you learn to do this? Because they're using your stuff as examples now."
And you were self-taught?
Yeah. Well, self-taught in a way. I stole from other guys.
Yeah.
I pieced it together my way, but I got
as
the
the
ideas
best
from other
artists
guys.
do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so then when Edmonton GIS, which was considered the creme de la creme at the time, they were short a guy, and they were looking for somebody. So I went in and talked to the officer in charge, and I said, "I'm interested." And he said, "Well, I'll talk to the other guys." And so some of the guys gave me the thumbs up, a couple gave me the thumbs down, but enough gave me the thumbs up that they said, "Yeah." So I went to Edmonton and did more of the stuff, but some of it was kind of mundane because you get stuff from outlying areas you had to look after, but you were called upon to help with homicides and those types of things. And again, lots of autonomy. Yeah, it was good, but I wasn't there a long time.
At this point in your career, are there things starting to take shape that you consider to be high-profile cases? Was there anything in that posting where you started to like really crack some crimes? You're like, wow, that meant something. Like I did some incredible work there.
Yeah, I think the warrant writing was a real big step for me. I got some recognition for that. I worked on one homicide. It occurred in Edmonton, but the body was dumped in Fort Saskatchewan's area. So I was the Fort Saskatchewan guy involved in that. The homicide guys from Edmonton, RCMP Edmonton, they really ran the investigation, but I was the guy for Fort Saskatchewan, and it was one of the first investigations where DNA was used.
Oh shit!
DNA evidence, yeah. So that's pretty interesting.
That was cutting edge.
Yep.
Really?
Yep. Cutting edge.
I mean, DNA wasn't sequenced until the mid '80s or something like that. So this would have been the early '90s at this point.
Early '90s.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
That's crazy, and my brain goes to cop shows, like, oh, we got the DNA evidence, blah blah blah. But I mean, this is new.
There was one other murder that happened there, the Kitty Schmidt murder, where a young married girl, quite religious, kind of stepped out of line and got involved in a romance with a real bad boy, and then broke it off with him, and he couldn't stand it. So he literally, eventually, kicked the door in, armed with a shotgun, and killed her and her husband, and locked the kids in a bedroom, and then killed himself. So pretty high profile.
Holy shit!
Another one was two young lesbians committed suicide. They gassed themselves in a garage, and the media had got wind that they were involved in a cult and they were lesbians, and they were making a really big deal about it. At the end of the day, they were young girls that committed suicide. It was really sad.
Yeah.
But it was so high profile because of the media scrutiny.
So it was your job to not only to solve it, but also clear the air around that and say, like, that's not what this is.
But you got to be careful what you say, right? Because you're really just an extension. You're doing an investigation to help the medical examiner determine the cause of death. Once it's not criminal, it's really their case. You're just tying things up.
Then it's not an investigation. Or sorry, there's no criminal involved. There's no one to catch.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you still have a lot of innocent people to protect. A lot of family people that really don't need that stuff out there.
And why did they run with the fact that it was a cult? Like, was this just kind of, obviously, this is the early '90s, and we don't talk about.
They don't even know how to use DNA at this point.
Well, but like, today.
Yeah, somebody slipped a silver skull into a casket, and it was seen. Yeah.
And that was like a calling card or something. Like what?
Yeah, that's how it was taken. Yeah. Like they were a little goth.
Okay.
And they just got a hold of that and ran with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
like my phone. I never got any sleep. My phone was ringing at home,
and that wouldn't even make people like blink twice now.
No,
it would just be like, oh, that's like that was a part of their personality or whatever. So
they shopped at Hot Topic.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, no, I mean, sexuality and religion and cult, that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah,
but it wasn't then.
Yeah. I guess it would have gotten people. Reminds me of remember the. Now I'm getting a little off topic, but when they first came out with the parental advisory labels on albums, is because of the social and cultural uproar in the U.S. and Al Gore's wife was in on it, and they were saying that they're corrupting minds and stuff like that.
Kids are listening to this music and committing crime, committing violence, and
it's making people violent, and it was just this it was this uproar about, in the grand scheme of things, nothing. But
Murray's here to tell you people were violent before then. It had nothing to do with the rap album.
No, and in my experience back then, Mario Brothers and Super Mario didn't really get a lot of crime going.
Yeah, the video games, that was a big one too.
Oh my God. Okay, so you're doing the work now that you're finding interesting. You're working high profile cases. You're making inroads with more specialized groups within your organization. What the fuck compelled you to do Assumption 2.0? How did that come up?
Yeah, well, my desire to get promoted.
Just driven.
Well, I wanted to be promoted, and the process at that time was you wrote an exam and then you got a score from your exam that placed you on a list, and then you went to an interview and you got a score from your interview, and that was combined with your exam score, and then you were placed on an overall list. And they would call and say, are you interested? Your name came up next on the list. Are you interested in going to wherever?
Wabasca.
Emery Wabasca, yeah.
Yeah.
Wob, as the kids call it.
Yeah. I don't know what the kids call it.
That's what I've always heard it called.
You're familiar with Wabasca?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, it gives me some cred. Even actually because I lived in Fort Saskatchewan as an adult, and it would sometimes come up that, like, I'd done my time. I did a bid up in Wabasca, and I can't remember. I'll have to maybe look it up, or hopefully it comes to me. But also not a nice place.
Yeah, it had its ups and downs. Like there was, I don't know if you remember, there was different reserves, right? They're all one band, but there's ABC.
Desmarais, Wuskatee, Wabasca, but they were all, ABC side.
Yeah. So like A reserve was the bad one, right? Some of the reserves weren't so bad. North End was bad. We dealt with the same group of people on a regular basis, but there was an awful lot of good people there too.
I look back on that time because I was around, and that's actually kind of, when is your first memory of sentience? Like, when are you actually starting to remember? I remember moving to Wabasca, and I had no concept of what that meant. But we lived on a lake. The RCMP compound was right next to water, which channeled into another lake. So we did things like we fished and hunted all the time. And in these remote communities, when I referred to the compound, and you were speaking earlier about the lockup on site, like, everything is together. So you live in the same area as all the other RCMP families. So it was a tight-knit group.
Yes.
So a lot of camaraderie on the force.
Yeah, there was a lot of tension in that one spot too. There was a couple of people that really caused some issues. One boss in particular, and a couple of the members didn't really fit in. They didn't like it, and one of them was a bit of a racist, and just
good spot to end up.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So hard to manage from my point, because I had a boss that nobody liked, and then some people that deserved to not be liked, and they would do things like not take their boots off when they went into somebody's house. Well, come on.
Oh, it just disrespecting the community.
Yeah.
Inviting that whole cop-hating mentality. You're already up there doing challenging work.
But most of us were pretty accepted there. You were accepted. I mean, Drew had some incidents, one on the bus, and he couldn't sit still at school. Did he ever tell you that his teacher used to make him put his coat on and run around the school 3 times, then come back in and sit down in 40 below weather?
I've never heard that story, but I've seen like the unable to sit still with my own 2 eyes in some later years. So I believe it.
Drew, why don't you tell him about Thor and Potato Hill on the sled?
Man, you're talking about doing investigations with limited resources. Try playing make believe up there. There wasn't a lot. It's funny because I can reflect, and there was a lot to do, but there wasn't a lot of people around. And so I had kind of, at this one summer, I think a couple RCMP families with young kids had moved out of town. My brother and sister are older. And so there really was like one kid who lived close to me, and his name was Thor. And Thor and I we'd cook up anything that potentially could be fun. And ultimately we landed, I can't remember what it actually was, but there's this big hill with kind of like a bunker underneath of it.
It's a root cellar.
A root cellar. Yeah, and we'd go up on top of this root cellar, and one kid would be in your like plastic lawn chair at the top of the hill, attached with some nylon rope to whether it was a toboggan or GT snow racer. And one kid would sit in the chair, and the other kid would go down the hill, and then we just see what happens. And now the kids are playing outside. It was pretty incredible. I think back to, that was in the era when you had those giant satellite dishes in your yard. If you wanted TV, you had to have a massive, huge satellite. You change the channel, run outside, and you'd see it turning. Did you guys ever have one of those on the farm?
I no, because we didn't have TV. I think we've told that where we just had like the over the air.
Oh yeah.
But my aunt and uncle had one of those. Yeah, out in the yard.
And they'd either they'd decommission, or you'd get one replaced, or they'd come down in bad weather. And so it wasn't insane to have an abundance of these giant dishes laying around. And in the winter, Dad and other members they'd drill holes in them and take us out on the lake with the snowmobile. And that's what we do. We'd sit in the satellite dish and just get ripped around the lake. Like, it was pretty crazy in hindsight. What was afforded to us. Definitely one of those things you don't know what you got till it's gone. There's definitely a different quality of life up there.
Yeah, I enjoyed my off time there because I enjoy the outdoors. You know, and so if I was off during the week and the kids were in school, I could go fishing, I could go hunting, I could go do whatever I wanted. So I enjoyed that. We had quads and skidoos and boats.
But you're isolated, right? Like you're up there, and this is the second time that you guys have done that. I guess we've kind of fallen into a bit of a sequence here. How's the police work? High profile cases. What do you remember from that posting? I don't even know where to start. I could start with some funny stuff like... Yeah, we like funny. That's our shtick.
Okay, one guy was a bad guy in a reserve, a big guy, and he hated Joe Brown.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Joe was a little guy.
This is one of your partners, like at the...
He's a subordinate. And so Joe had to go arrest him, and he goes into this guy's house, and he's lying on the bed passed out. So Joe handcuffed him before he woke him up, and he just lost his shit because he couldn't fight now. You know, just, you can't do that.
You can't. You're not
This
reading
isn't
him.
fair.
You're not reading him his Miranda rights. He's sleeping, and you get sneak the cuffs on him. Oh, did he? He probably got off on that. You can't do that.
No.
Only citizen's arrest.
Yeah.
On the
I don't
checkout
know.
line.
Trying to think of Desmarais stories. We had some serious shootings that were bad. There was a lot of good people there, though. There really was. But alcohol was a problem, and violence.
Yeah.
Didn't feel as threatened there as I thought I would, unless there was 3 or 4 of them. But they were pretty timid if it was 1 or 2.
And I'm assuming I don't want to mix this up, but some pretty dire circumstances for people up there, like really low socio and economic zone. Like dealing with that, what's that like?
So quite a spread. Like there's the haves and the have-nots, which you wouldn't think would happen on a reserve, but it does. It does. Like usually the chief's family they're prospering, and a lot of other people are suffering. The last while we were there, they had a great chief, and he was doing his best to alleviate that. But yeah, it's funny. They call it there was the MD, so the land of opportunity, and it really was. There's all kinds of oil and forestry work, and anybody with indigenous background or heritage could get any kind of job they wanted, and a lot of them did, but a lot of them just wouldn't.
They were dealing with some of their own demons and stuff like that.
Well, they just wouldn't. They just wait for the check to come.
Right.
Yeah.
And was that tough sometimes working like on or adjacent to those reserves where not only are you dealing with like your police work and stuff like that, but you're also dealing with, a cultural, like a whole culture within that. Like you said, the previous chief was living the high life and everybody else was not. And that could be an issue within the culture. That's a whole other layer to the job that made it more difficult, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Like, was it challenging to see that? Like, I feel like I remember, you guys going out on calls, and you're entering a space, a trailer, because it's a domestic altercation or whatever the call would be. I don't fucking know. and it's like they're rocking oven heat, and there's 6 people in there. There's no furniture. Like that's got to be. At this point in your career, like you're really seeing all that stuff.
Yeah.
How was that to deal with? Just part of the job at that point?
Yeah, pretty much. I was sort of lost in thought there, and I was thinking about some of the stories up there. And
Oh yeah, no, Dex is an incredible editor. I like to throw wrenches. Dex, play that. No, I'm just messing with you. Play that Living Up in Wabasca Desmarais jingle that you've been working on. He'll do work in post.
Yeah.
But if you have anything that comes to mind about your time up there, we'd love to hear it. 100%.
I'm thinking about a time when this kid was busting up his mom's house. He's like 15. He's a tall, skinny kid, but not a big kid, but a tall, skinny kid. But he's drunk and he's breaking everything up. So she calls the police, and I go there, and he is out of control. He's just smashing everything. And she says, "I want him out of here." And he looks at me, and he turns and he grabs a frying pan. So he's going to hit me with a frying pan. So I'm not about to let that happen. So I throw a haymaker. He ducks. I miss, but I got his mom square in the nose. And broke her nose.
A little bit of paperwork?
I didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
I got done. She didn't complain. Like we got the kid under arrest and got him into jail, and I sent a couple of guys back there and said, go talk to her and get a statement from her and see if she'll tell us what happened in her words. And she said, no, that cop was trying to help, and I got in the way, and it was an accident. So nothing came of it, but it was not one of my prouder moments.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm visualizing it now.
Oh,
I'm playing this in my head. playing the movie.
Yeah, I hit her hard.
Oh man. Okay, so we're up in Desmarais. You're still driven. The career is going well. It's a promotion when you go there. You're now Corporal Murray Hoover.
That's right.
And what's the next step? How do we get back to civilization?
Well, it's a limited duration post of 3 years. We went up there in July, and then I called, in 3 years later in June.
The day of.
Well, yeah, probably called in April and said, it's time. We got to start talking about where I'm going to go. And the staffing officer, she said, well, I think we're going to leave you there till September. I said, I'll have you know that in the history of this detachment, nobody has ever actually spent 3 years. Everybody's left early.
You've done your research.
Yeah. So if I leave at the beginning of July, then, it's all square. But anyways, she said, okay, well, where do you want to go? I said, how about Lethbridge? No openings in Lethbridge. Okay, how about Calgary? No, there's no openings in Calgary. I said, well, I want to go to Plain Close. She said, well, there's no openings. She said, why don't you go to Red Deer? Everybody likes Red Deer. I said, yeah, everybody likes living in Red Deer. Everybody hates working in Red Deer. I'm not going to Red Deer. I'm going to Calgary or Lethbridge. She said, well, you can't be that specific. I said, I'm going to Calgary or Lethbridge. Those are my two choices. So a couple of weeks went by and she called back. She said, okay, well, there's nothing in Lethbridge, but you're either going to Calgary Major Crimes or Calgary GIS.
What's GIS stand for? Just
General Investigation Section. Okay. So that's plain clothes.
Okay.
So what happened there was I had worked on a shooting in High River in the early 80s, and one of the guys was with GIS in Calgary, was now the officer in charge of Major Crimes and GIS in Calgary. And he liked me. And so when my name came up, he said, yeah, we'll take Murray. I just don't know where I'm going to put him yet. So, but we'll take him one of those spots. So they called back a while later and said, you're going to Calgary GIS. So we did. Yeah. I was very happy.
Moving to Okotoks was an absolute trip. Because I thought Wabasca, I thought that was normal society. Like
that was everything you knew.
Yeah, that's where I kind of came into my own. Coming into a town, I think at that time, Okotoks this is 1999. It's 9,000. It's 10,000 people.
I think 8,500, maybe even 6,500.
Yeah.
It wasn't very big.
It was definitely, I had that exact, I laughed so hard and said, you went to Safeway. I remember going to Nutters downtown.
Yeah.
Going to Shoppers Drug Mart, Well,
yeah. You're the reason we ended up in Okotoks.
How elaborate?
Your mom worked, and I worked, and you were 10. And you were going to be the last one to leave the house in the morning and the first one to be home every day.
Oh, my villain origin story.
And I was not comfortable with that happening in Calgary. So originally we were going to move to Airdrie. We actually put an offer in on a house. And after we were driving away, I said, you know what? I don't want to live in that town. And Shannon said, I don't either. So we called the realtor and said, pull the offer.
I did a post in Airdrie. It sucks. Hate that place.
Yeah.
We were all really disappointed in you when you moved to Airdrie. You're so close to us. Why the fuck you go to Airdrie?
Yeah, so we settled on Okotoks and
well, thank you for that.
And picked a place close to an elementary school that you could walk to and from easily.
Yeah, actually, I have a Wabasca to Okotoks transition related story. So one of the things that we touched on before is that we got to recreate a lot in Wabasca, and we fished all the time. And the RCMP actually hosts, I think they still host, a really big fishing derby, and they had aged categories. And one year, I think it was the last year we were there, Dad took us out on one of the forces boats actually, and we were all fishing, and I caught a really big walleye, and it ended up winning the intermediate or junior category.
It was actually the biggest walleye caught in the tournament, but you were in the junior category.
It was a beefcake.
You won the whole thing though. You're the club champion.
Yeah. Well, I got beat up at school because the kids thought I was lying. That was like a thing. Kids today fight over fucking what flavor of Prime they're drinking. that was Wabasca. You go to school and be like, you never caught that fish. You're that cop's kid. You're a liar. Munyao. Yeah. But I remember I won this beautiful bike, and then we moved to Okotoks. I just went to school one day and I just left it at the side of Big Rock. And I was like, perfect. you know. There wasn't a lot of like bike stands and chaining up your bike. That wasn't a thing. So it was September. It was probably the first week of school. I came to Big Rock along the back fence and just put my bike there. Toodaloo, you know, went and I wasn't made to run laps at Big Rock, but they did put a cardboard box around me. If you remember that.
Literally and figuratively.
Literally, they would. That was back in the day. Then coming at the end of the day, and the bike's gone. I was like, what? Where do we just move? Why can't we be in the safety
Of Wabasca.
This shit never happened in Wabasca.
Yeah, Okotoks is a giant crime hub.
But you're not working in Okotoks. You're working in Calgary, GIS, General Investigative Services. As Constable Carpenter would say, hey, tell your dad I said GIS. He'll laugh at that. That was because that was our DARE officer back in the day.
Yeah, I remember.
We just sold our trailer to his kid.
No way.
Yeah.
Small world. Yeah. So you'd said it's everyone knows everyone. That was it. As soon as we get into town, like, you know, like the cops know my dad, you know, and it's actually really interesting that way. But you're in GIS, and this is when stuff starts getting really interesting. At least, not that it wasn't interesting before. But this is, again, when I'm starting to be cognitive of your position and what you're actually doing. You work some really high-profile stuff, and you end up in major crimes shortly after being in GIS for a couple of years.
That's right.
What are you doing at that point? What's that work like? And how's it doing, like, big city crime?
Well, a lot of the crimes we worked on weren't in the city. Our office was in the city, but our area was outside of the city because the Calgary City Police look after the city.
Right.
We really worked a lot of different things, from armed robberies to homicides to, well, you name it, serious assaults, thefts, break-and-enters, serial crimes, safe attacks, those types of things, auto theft rings, pretty much everything. So a real good experience. I was in charge of a team, and I was the senior corporal in charge of a team, so when the boss was away, I was in charge of the section. So I was getting good experience as an administrator and managing bigger teams and doing specialized work. I can't think of any really standout cases. I mean, there was quite a few cases. But one thing I did while I was there is I had a desire to do undercover work, and I had a desire to do some drug work. And at that time, nobody was working on street-level dealers in southern Alberta, in the small towns. So you could sell drugs on the streets.
And we did.
in small-town Alberta with no fear of being caught because nobody was doing any investigating on it. So I underwent the mandatory undercover training, and it was in Halifax the year I went. And then when I came back, I got one of the guys working for me to get in touch with CSA, Criminal Investigative Services Alberta, and they allot money to any joint force operations. So we were just one force, but we were assisting other detachments. So they said, okay, that works. So they gave us the money to do it. So it wasn't costing the RCMP any money. And it gave me the chance to mobilize a team of undercover operators and surveillance team with them to go around to small towns and buy small amounts of drugs. And we just got tremendous press and accolades from detachment commanders saying that their local municipal officials were just elated that this was going on. And we're talking about buying like really small amounts, but people were just enamored by it. They were just so happy somebody was finally doing it. So that got me going in undercover stuff, and it got me running some pretty big teams. During that time, I also had a chance to work on some quite a few homicides because it's I wouldn't say we were the farm team for major crimes, but you could look at it like that. You get called up, right? So worked on some pretty high profile drug homicides.
From a career standpoint, so you almost created this niche now. Like you started doing the work and like, hey, there's demand here. People are happy. And you're an undercover investigator now.
Well, so I there's two types of undercover. There's undercover operator and undercover coverman. So I took the training for undercover coverman, which meant I am in charge of the undercover operator and the team and make sure things happen legally, lawfully, safely, and driven to some type of success. Make sure all the talents are mobilized in one direction. So that's what I cut my teeth doing undercover work was small time drug stuff. But then eventually, or not even eventually, not long after that, I started doing undercover work on homicides, which I really quite enjoyed.
We definitely I've got many questions. We're gonna save that for our true or false segment. But there's definitely a lot of stories that I want to hear from the horse's mouth. At this point in time, what are you thinking is the end game, or you've found your work with the RCMP? This is what makes you happy.
Yeah. So at that point, I would have been happy just to stay in. And by the way, GIS stands for Goofs in Suits, GM Special. All the uniform guys had names for it because I think they're just jealous.
They're jealous.
Yeah.
I was hoping you'd say something like that because I remember him saying to me, like, tell him I said GIS. I'm like, oh, he'll probably fucking laugh.
Yeah.
By the way, Dare sucks.
Yeah. Oh, here come all the guys in their black leather jackets again. Well, because we did, but. So, yeah, no, I would have been quite happy to stay there in that capacity, but move up in ranks doing it, right, to eventually go to sergeant and be in charge and then maybe higher after that. But then I got the call to go full-time undercover for the G8 summit in the Kananaskis.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. But I didn't know it was going to be. Like, I didn't know. It's the G8 summit. What are we undercover doing? So, well, it's National Security Intelligence Gathering. Okay, well, what do you want me to do? We want you to live undercover in Canmore for 9 months and have a team of undercover operators working for you. And we want you to travel around quite a few places, infiltrating potential subversive groups that are planning on attending the G8 Summit to disrupt the meetings. So I said, yeah, I'll do it.
And that would have been post 9/11 then, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of anxiety there about terrorism and stuff like that. Yeah.
What year was the G8 Summit? 2003, 2002? 2001. Oh, so right after.
Right after.
Oh, yeah, heightened. Yeah. What was that experience like?
It was good and bad because it was really hard on the family. I missed an awful lot at home, and mom had to do a lot of stuff without me around, so it was tough that way. But the work was great, and I had some great people to work with, and we did some really interesting stuff. I did some cutting edge stuff. I had guys. For instance, I had to have people inside the Kananaskis Lodge undercover. So I developed a scenario where two of the people that were my subordinates would get a job at the hotel as part of a workman's compensation retraining program, and they were to work in the employees' commissary, so they would know every kid working in the hotel. It was a horrible job for them, but it worked. And the only crime we uncovered that was going to happen was one chick wanted to throw a pie in the president's face.
That was it?
Yeah.
Okay, man.
Because her brother couldn't get into the country.
Listen, we need you to go in there and stop all these terrorist killers. And you're like, all right, we got a cream pie situation.
Ooh, sexy. Man, there's a lot to unpack there. I gotta imagine so Dad's the operator. He's running the show, and then you have these high profile team members who are they're undercover cops. They're undercover homicide investigators, and as part of their detail, they have to take a job at a hotel. So and
they've ranked down so significantly.
It's not like you can tell, you can't turn over to Steve and be like, I'm actually a fucking cop,
And you would want to say that so fucking bad. That has to be day one of training.
Oh, you're taking shit from some fucking lady. Okay.
I don't need this. I'm a cop.
Yeah, you're folding towels.
Pretty much, because that's as low as you can go. They did well because all the kids that work there, they're all kids, right? So they call them mom and dad, and they love them.
Yeah.
So they had fun doing it, but they had long days, right? Just handing out chips.
Your job is doing another job, man. And then you already touched on it because you're essentially doing terrorist threat assessments. You are doing terrorist threat assessments that are essential. It's not essentially. Was there ever a situation where you had to infiltrate a group and your guy on the inside, 20 minutes into the meeting, these guys are literally just singing Kumbaya? We missed the mark. Was there ever any groups that they're all harmless?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost all of them. The one I'm thinking of, I forget what the group was called. Something like the Knitting Grandmas. And
this is organized crime written all over it.
It does, doesn't it? And anyways, they were going to disrupt the the summit meeting by knitting koozies and putting them around trees. So we didn't try to stop them.
But so this is this one particular detail, and it was a huge detail. And I do have a question about it in our true and false segment that I've alluded to. But let's go anti-knitting grandma. When you're an undercover operator, there's a myriad of cases that you're working. And I know this is potentially sensitive, but is there a time where stuff got real? Like in an operation, you're trying to, whatever it may be, elicit a response or have someone work close with someone else. That has to have happened. Tell us about that.
So we had a homicide that occurred where 3 bad guys were in the bush drinking. And the one bad guy was forced to sit in the middle of the pickup truck on the way out there, which, in the hierarchy, the middle seat, that's,
Lucky Pierre.
Yeah, you got
Brad has to jack us off, yes.
Yeah. So he was pissed off about that. And so the other passenger, of course, isn't giving him what he considers his due. So they drink, and eventually he beats this guy to death with a boulder. The driver, he's passed out. This guy's dead. This guy walks out, so there's no witnesses. Anyway, so I'm in charge of the undercover operation, and it went on for quite a while. This dovetails in one of your other questions about the Jopaz, but anyways, we get into this family, and they like the operator that we've introduced them to, and we start making runs to BC to a Native Indian reserve near Kelowna to get stolen cigarettes that they've stolen from the railroad, from a rail car. And we're transporting them back to Alberta. And we're going like once a week. And we'd pay this guy some money. Because what we do is we take all the cigarettes and we put them in a motel room. And he'd have to guard them. But we'd flip him a carton of cigarettes and some money. He's a tough guy. Anyways, he seems to be falling for it pretty well. He goes out and gets drunk with all the boys. We got all these undercover operators. And he's telling them, I need guys like you in my life. This is so great. And, I'm making money. I love all this. And so we think he's right for the Mr. Big scenario, where you get him to confess to a crime boss to be accepted into a criminal organization. So I'm in one hotel room, like call it the control room, watching what the goings on in another hotel room, which is the undercover operator, the Mr. Big, who's an undercover operator, and the bad guy, who we always call the target. And he was not playing, he's not biting. And now it's just the Mr. Big and him left. And Mr. Big excuses himself and comes out because he wants to know what do I do next? Like, it's not really working. And we're not supposed to be recording. We weren't recording, but we could still hear him. And he says, "This is that fucking big guy scam."
Oh, so he sussed it out.
He did. So anyways, he says to the Mr. Big when he comes back, he says, "Fuck you, I'm out of here." So he goes with our other operator. And he tells our other operators, these fucking guys are cops. But he doesn't clue in. He doesn't clue in that guy is. Anyways, they get into a bit of an argument. And, our guy's small, but he's tough. But he's no match for this guy. He's big. And this guy wants to fight. Like, he's so good at fighting. He's going like, watch the boots. And then he smacks him, right? And so he's like, I'm going, holy fuck, right? So he takes a beer bottle and smashes it. And smashes it over this guy's head and cuts him open for a whole bunch and slices half his thumb off and then gets out. So we scoop him and get him away. But now we got a problem. We've taken a suspected murderer, given him some alcohol, gashed his head open in another province and in another city. We're kind of responsible for what happens now. There's only one hospital. We got to get this guy's thumb sewn back on, and we got to get this guy's head sewed up. So we got to get him into the hospital at the same time without running into each other. And then we got to figure out how to get this guy back to Alberta before he steals a car or hurts somebody. Or
starts committing crime in BC.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, because then the shit's really going to hit the fan. So
what was he even doing there, right?
Yeah. Well, so when you're doing something like that, you have let the hierarchy in British Columbia know you're coming, and they kind of give you the royal assent. Yeah, go ahead. But the shit's going to rain from heights. Funny how that happened, though, because the undercover coordinator for the province here was supposed to report it to the undercover coordinator for Canada, and he just never did. So none of it, there was no fallout.
Did you got everyone sewn up and?
Yeah, but that was the end of it. I mean, the guy's still out, still running around. That's one of those ones though where like nobody cared.
He was a bad guy who killed another bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a tragedy, like loving father of
No, and you don't.
four, like
Yeah, you can't put a price on one person's life compared to another. But there was no.
Just did.
Well, you know what I mean, though. There was no.
you can't do that as a professional.
No, and we didn't.
Yeah.
We tried. We spent a lot of money and a lot of resources, put a lot of effort into it.
That's a heavy one. That's crazy.
I have a question because you were talking about working as a team, and I feel like this is apropos. So you obviously work as a team. How often do you get these conflicts maybe within the team where, somebody's saying, hey, we need to go this way, and you're feeling like we need to go this way, and is there a lot of that, or you feel like you're usually pretty in tune?
So once I was in major crimes after when I was leaving the G8 summit, after I was done that undercover, they called and said, "Will you go to major crimes full time?" And there was another conversation I had to have with Mom because I knew I was going to be away from home a lot. For lack of a better term, when you're called up, you go to a team, and your team is a team. And the way we would do things in a major case investigation is we would rotate through the team who had what position. So everybody was experienced at all the positions in a major investigation. So one person would be the primary investigator, and he was responsible for the speed, control, direction, resources, all that kind of stuff. He made all those choices, but all his choices were based on input and feedback from all the other guys. So before he made a decision, he listened to everybody. Okay. So it never came up that way.
Yeah.
In GIS, it was different. I had 2 guys on my team that really didn't like me at first. One of them still doesn't today, but the other guy came around. But what happened there was they were in line for promotion. They didn't want somebody moving in that was already promoted, and so they were pissed off.
They shot it. They
took it out of
one of them. Yeah.
So no, I don't. I there was not to say that everybody got along, but once the direction was picked, it was picked.
Right. There wasn't this internal arguing like, no, we need to follow this lead, or no, this is more, we're going after the wrong guy, whatever.
No, but that said, tunnel vision is one of the things that can really skewer an investigation and can build a defense. The defense would always be, well, you didn't look at anybody else. That's why in those types of investigations with a homicide anyways, you did investigate those other things too. Maybe not to the same extent, but you did look at it to make sure you were still on the right track. Because if you didn't, you created a possible defense for the guy that did do it.
And you have to be really mindful of that because like you probably, like as a investigator, career officer, you have a hunch. You're like, I fucking think this. You have to constantly check yourself to make sure you don't become too myopic.
Yep,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. So when did you I feel like we've told the story and just bits and pieces of your career, and we do have some more questions for you. But I want to know, when did you decide to retire from the force, and what was after that? Because you did remain in enforcement. You took a different job. You didn't leave that profession, but you did leave the RCMP. So how did that come about?
A couple of factors. One is I was very tired of getting a call on a Sunday night to go to work on a homicide that nobody cared about. I was just tired of it. I was worn out. I was burned out. I still liked undercover work, but the hours were killing me. I was getting older. The other factor was I'd been an operational policeman for so long that I didn't have the administrative skills to progress into running buildings and get higher. So I wasn't going to get, it was very unlikely I was going to get promoted again. I had tried a couple of times and it came close.
Because you had specialized so much.
I had specialized so much, and there was only 2 staff sergeants in the province that were operational, or 3, I guess. So that likely wasn't going to happen. The other 2 things that happened was I knew I would still be marketable. I was only 50 years old, and my boss was leaving to start a new program called the Alberta Counterterrorism Crisis Management Plan, one of Ralph Klein's initiatives after 9/11. And basically it was a plan to ensure that infrastructure critical to the safety and well-beings of Albertans was protected in the event of terrorist threat. And so this organization would make sure they had plans in place to escalate and de-escalate in accordance with terrorist threats. So he recruited myself and my buddy Dan McLean actually, and asked us to apply an interview. And so we both applied and interviewed, and lo and behold, we got the jobs. So we both retired on the same day, and we both went to work for the Alberta Counterterrorism Crisis Management Plan. But it kind of fizzled.
Was that under the heading of Alberta Serious Incident Response? No. That's this.
This is actually under the heading of the Sheriff's Branch.
Okay.
But we were.
Did you have to give in your gun? You have to fucking hand in your sidearm?
Hand in your badge and your gun.
From the RCMP? Yeah. But then I got a sheriff's badge and gun.
Oh, okay. Who's got better guns?
The sheriff did.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we weren't like the sheriffs. They go up in categories. We were a fairly high category. But it was kind of fizzling. And so, although they'd say you would never lose your job, but you might end up working for the province as, say, and you still get the same pay, but you might be just a really high-paid prison guard. So I didn't really want to roll the dice on that.
Yeah.
So, I applied for a job with the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia and flew out to Surrey and interviewed, and they offered me a job.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. So, and then that didn't work out because we had a difference of opinion on where I was going to work. So I came back to Alberta, and that's when I went to work for the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, but only on a part-time basis.
And for the listeners, that's like the cops.
Yeah, so they come in after a cop-involved shooting or whatever to make sure that protocols are followed. And
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna do a segment break, a drink refresh, a little pee-pee. But just a capstone, a couple questions about your career. You know, do you have any regrets? Is there anything you'd tell a younger Murray Hoover before they join the force? Anything like that? Like, I want to know, as you reflect back on your career, you know, it's pretty monumental. You did a lot of really important things. Yeah, how do you think about it?
Well, it was one big adventure, and I enjoyed a lot of it. But the one thing I would say to a young person joining is, if you want something, go and get it, because they're not going to give it to you. And you got to protect yourself. Don't trust them, because you'll be working for people that are in it for themselves. So
it's probably good advice for any career,
I suppose.
Yeah.
Like the amount of police, especially, the guys that you're working for haven't done the work.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't. They didn't. They avoided the work. They never took risks. They don't know how to do the work. They don't know how to teach you. They don't know how to tell you. They don't know. Then they don't need to. They need to manage you and rely on you, but they will interfere.
Fair enough. And outside of the organization, the lifelong friendships, the experiences you had, you know, definitely going to ask some questions about some of the tomfoolery.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I also have lifelong enemies.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah.
Interesting. Dex, you have any questions about the journey?
I don't think so. I think we've had a good discussion. You want to take a quick break?
Let's do a segment break, drink refill, and then let's hit these. We got the opportunity here. I mean, make no mistake. You know, Murray is on this podcast as a favor to us. He is my father, but it's not every day you get to sit down with someone who has a 28-year career with the RCMP, and so we have some just like straight up like, if you had the opportunity to ask a cop anything, we have those questions. So we got to know. So I want to get into that. But yeah, let's play that little piano diddly. We're live. We're back.
Yeah, I just always got to check that the numbers are actually moving. Because, like, it would be really lame to, like... My biggest fear... Let's talk about fears for a moment. Let's open up. My biggest fear is that, like, we'll have this great interview with Murray, and then I'll, like, go to, like, upload it. And
you're like ADD. You haven't hit record.
There's nothing there, and I'm just like, oh, like, can we get your dad back to the basement for another couple hours?
We rehearsed. Well, and in that same line, so we just paused it. I cracked a drink, did a little tinkle, that kind of thing, and then we sat here and we just actually had like a really real talk, and we had to be measured with Dad. We had to be measured with the conversations we were having, because, you know, it's not an easy job. It's not a fucking easy job, and it's not a meritocracy. It's not, like, I think it would be fair to say that it's a pretty thankless position. And so we wanted to highlight some of the ins and outs and give the listeners a taste of, you know, what a career in law enforcement might actually be like. But But there's a dark side to it, and just even sitting here over the last 10 minutes and having those conversations, like it's perhaps a little bit realer than we're portraying here, and we are just trying to be mindful of the fact that some of these cases, some of these investigations that Murray's worked on, these are real people, these are families, and also my dad's a real person, and a career in law enforcement is not for the faint of fucking heart. And you definitely dealt with some stuff. So we appreciate you being here, and we appreciate you opening up. But we are really trying not to go too hard. I think the example I brought it up after, is like, what's the most fucking gruesome crime scene you've ever been to? That hardcore drama shit, that late night murder TV. And that stuff does happen, but it's just not probably...
Well, have you ever listened to like the Crime Beat podcast? I
only listen to Rad Dad Redemption podcast.
Alicia likes this podcast. I think she said it was like in her top 5 when we did the Rad Moms episode. But said Nancy Hixt. I think it's her. She's the anchor in Calgary.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she'll go through a lot of these major high-profile crimes that have happened in Calgary, and it'll be a big long episode where they're rehashing it, but they're going into more detail and all of that, and behind the scenes, and the more of the reporting side of it. But of course, they'll have maybe some of the investigators on or whatever. And when I listen to that, like we've listened to some of them, and like I don't know, I don't like that stuff, and it's like traumatizing to me. Like there's and I'm just listening to it. I'm like, oh, I wasn't in the house where they found like 3 dead bodies and bloody handprints all over the wall and stuff like that. And I'm like listening to it. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, so imagine being the guy who's
being there and like discovering that situation.
Well, and you said the word is trauma, right? And it's not something that we want to force Murr to relive for our 100 listeners. So we're trying
nor is that our vibe. Like, like we are so like unequipped to handle that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Professionally.
You'd have to definitely be taking care of Dex and I to hear some more aspects of that. But if you're ever in the neighborhood, and you want to have a drink with my dad and I, you could probably hear some. We'll call it after dark. Yeah. We could flesh out some of these stories. I'm sure he's willing if you bring him a nice bottle of scotch, because he's got some pretty unbelievable stuff that he's lived through. So I think is this okay to be just like a fucking citizen? Like, thank you for your service. Is that fucking thank you for solving all those murders and going undercover and doing that?
Yeah.
Did you ever get thanked in your career? Did you ever get like recognized, a medal, anything like that?
Yeah. Excuse me. I have a few medals, but I got a letter of commendation from the commanding officer of K Division, which is Alberta, congratulating my team on an 89.9% solve rate.
That's high.
Yeah, it's nice. But the 10.1 we didn't solve are the ones we worked hardest on.
That's what keeps you up at night.
Yeah. We worked harder on the ones we didn't solve because we didn't solve them.
That's profound. Yeah.
It's still nice to be recognized.
Yeah, I guess, but it's like, and that was a bit of the conversation when we had our break. I think we all strive to be the people that the quitting bell hits. And when you're in a profession where there's not necessarily a quitting bell because crimes are happening all the time, you have to strive to be that person who leaves it at work. That's helped me a lot in my profession, is just trying to frame it. But when you're dealing with people's lives, when you're dealing with the safety of your team members, and the buck stops with you, is it the buck or the puck?
Buck.
Okay, Canada's the puck. The puck stops with you. You take that home. It's a very hard job. So really, really incredible that you're willing to share it with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And now let's ask some fucking
Should we
questions.
lighten it up a little bit?
Yeah, lighten it up. Take it away, Dex.
You got the first one. Right?
Yeah, my first one's super dark.
Okay, I'll do my first one then, and we'll loop back.
Let's
around
lighten
here.
it up after this next question.
How do I make sure? I'm raising.
How do I commit a murder?
Yeah. I'm raising 2 young girls. You're a parent as well. How do I ensure that my child does not become a career criminal that's getting investigated for homicides and drug crime?
Man,
is there like a common thread? You look at these people's backgrounds, and
what ties them together?
Yeah,
hard to say, because I've seen everything from like psychosis to drug abuse to alcoholism to anger management. There's not one common thread. There just isn't. The one thing about homicides is, for the most part, unless they're serial, for the most part, the person that has killed a person has killed the only person they were ever going to kill. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It does.
It's kind of like a crime of passion in a way.
Most of them are.
Yeah.
Even if it's not passion, it's
in the moment.
It's in the moment. They're only going to do the one robbery that's going to kill somebody, right? They're never going to do it again. Or they're serial, which is a whole different animal. And I don't know how you stop somebody from being a serial killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck, Dex. I think you're doing a good job. But they're probably not serial killers.
Probably not.
Not both of them.
I mean, the
Only needs to be one.
the only advice I could ever offer would be, if you notice them not being normal, then they're not being fucking normal.
Like, be present, I guess, and intervene.
Yeah. Well, that'd be part of their lives, right?
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of the misguided people that we dealt with that don't come from a normal family background, and maybe that's a common thread, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, negative life experiences.
Right.
So you just got to do a better job of that. I don't think you're doing a bad job.
I mean, have you read Freakonomics?
I have, actually.
Okay, well then, just don't move to one of those states, or
Yeah. One of the well, I wouldn't say funny. I was going to say the funniest part about, but there's a direct correlation with the legalization of abortion and drop in crime rates.
That's Freakonomics.
Because, obviously if you have like an unwanted child,
Yeah.
then they're not wanted. They're going to have social issues. So,
They're going to have a lot of that negative experience growing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Adverse, traumatic childhood experiences.
Yeah.
Well, if you get a chance to read the book, because he backs it up with stats.
I think I got it in paperback upstairs in my book collection.
More of an audio book, sci-fi.
Well, there's Freakonomics and the second book of Freakonomics.
Yeah. They're both good.
You touched on something, though. Living in Okotoks. Like, I often consider not living in Okotoks, but I feel like we have a decently low crime rate. I haven't been a victim of crime.
Like, the worst thing that's happened in Okotoks in recent memory was like the mild vandalism spree that those teenagers went on a couple weeks ago.
I think they robbed a couple. They got some phones.
Yeah, which, like, if that's the worst thing.
And that's and not only crime, but like natural disaster, knock on wood. We're in a pretty safe space. We're not in Tornado Alley.
No.
We're not in a heavily forested area. We have extreme weather, but not extreme weather events on the scale that other places experience. Demographics, safe community, high socioeconomics. No fucking poisonous spiders or snakes that I know of.
No,
unless you hear that fact, unless you hear the jingle right now.
No, you got to go down to Medicine Hat for those.
Yeah, so I think where you raise them, how you raise them, your family, your core values, and then I think geography has to be a bit of it. Like I don't know if someone gave me right now, you could do your same job anywhere in the world. Where would you go? I'd be like west. Okotoks. Like, I don't know. So I think you're in a safe space. Okay, now I said no more dark stuff, but I gotta know. And this is my ask a cop any question. Have you ever had to discharge your firearm, and have you ever been shot at?
I have not discharged my firearm at a human being. I came close a couple of times. I've been shot at a few times, yeah.
That must have been terrifying.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Not ideal.
Not ideal. No. Yeah.
Those were the Assumption days.
Yeah.
Denata, terrible shots.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Oh, I'm fueling up the truck one night. Bullet ricochets off a gas tank, our own fuel tank. You wouldn't know Howard Price, but the fellow I worked with was unlocking the detachment door. Bullet hit the door between his legs. Myself and Dan Rennick were New Year's Eve. We were at a complaint, and we had arrested a guy. And we just got back to the truck, and somebody started shooting at us. We ducked down behind the windshield or behind the dashboard, and floor it in reverse, not knowing if we're going to back into anything, with a prisoner in the back who's also vulnerable to be shot. We still don't know who it was, but we were shot a few times.
Is there an element to that becomes normalized, or is it
No.
is it always terrifying?
Always terrifying.
That's not one you're like
for me, anyways.
Yeah,
I know. Like years later, I was in Fort Saskatchewan, and a guy I knew in the Edmonton emergency response teams, he came to me and he said, "We need another member." And the guys talked about you and thought maybe you might be interested. I said, Donnie, I really appreciate your thinking of me, and it means a lot to me that you'd ask. But I've been shot at, so no.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm not looking for more opportunities to be shot at.
Yeah. Well, and it's a thing, I don't know if it has to do with the polarization of society and uptick in crime, but you do read about it. It's a dangerous job.
Well, more so now than ever.
Yeah.
When I first joined, there was not a lot of handguns out there, but they're everywhere now.
Yeah. The world is objectively more dangerous
Yeah.
outside of Okotoks.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
A lot of those handguns, like there's like international smuggling now. Like just the world's more connected, and now when you were starting your career in High River, the goings on in High River probably not a consideration of like cartels in Central America, but now like they have a foothold. Like I was just watching a documentary about how they smuggle people, like cartels in South America smuggle people through Central America, get them on a plane in Panama to Canada so that they can, claim refugee status in Canada. And like the cartel is behind all of this, and they will make them like as their payment, like mule drugs to Canada.
I was having an argument with my mother-in-law. There was some crazy story about, I can't remember if it must have been, I want to say Tabor, and some type of crime event had happened there. And we were reading the news story. I forget what it was specifically. But I was like, I can't believe that would happen in a place like Tabor. And my mother-in-law, she's like, well, that's where all the Mexican Mennonite gangs are.
Yep.
And I was like, I'd never heard that. And I was like, the fuck, what?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't think there's Mexican Mennonites.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot around there.
So I'm an idiot. And then I was like, and I don't think there's the subsect of Mexican Mennonites who are also like involved in organized crime. That can't be a real thing.
No, I think, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, one of the biggest cocaine busts in Canadian history to date is in Tabor. Mexican Mennonites, they were shipping, on the Mexican side, they were shipping tractor parts, and the panels were stuffed with like kilos of coke, and it was coming to Canada, and they were unpacking it, but it was tractor parts for their Mennonite colleagues in Canada.
I never did any work in Tabor as a policeman, but I did as a contract investigator for the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee, did do some work in Tabor, and I was absolutely amazed at how many Mexican nationals are and Mennonites.
You were doing that job, and you had to do a welfare check, and there was like, you'll have to tell me the correct sequence of events, but you were essentially checking on the welfare of an individual, and this home that they owned is not where they were residing, and it was being used as a fentanyl mill.
Yeah, so
like that shit, it does happen. So shout out to my mother-in-law and all the gangs out there. You are real. This stuff does absolutely happen.
Yeah, I was working for the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee as a contract investigator, and I was contracted to help this disadvantaged individual relocate from his residence that his adopted parents, who had passed away, left him. And he didn't feel comfortable there anymore, so he wanted to move. The reason he didn't feel comfortable is he had a cousin who had friends that would come over a couple times a week and go in the basement, and they would give him drugs to, like soft drugs, cannabis,
cool drugs.
Cool drugs.
Yeah.
And he's okay with that. And but he didn't know what they were doing downstairs, and he didn't like it, so he wanted out. So when we were cleaning stuff up, I was downstairs, and I looked, and there was a mechanics press with some wood on it and some powder, and I said, "Fuck, these guys are pressing fentanyl." So I phoned the police because I'm not a policeman. I was a contract investigator. And the police came and said, well, we're not going down there because they recently had, that was right on the, when they, I don't know if you remember this, maybe, 6 years ago or so, Calgary City Police investigators were exposed to fentanyl not knowing they were being exposed to it. Mm-hmm. And so then now they won't go to these things. I'm going, well, who do I call? You guys won't go downstairs. I'm sure it's fentanyl. I'm not going back down there.
Yeah.
Like, what do we do? Do we just torch the house now? Like, and then finally they went downstairs and they said, holy fuck. And then they ran out. And so we got out of there unscathed. I think it was just fentanyl, not care fentanyl or whatever the super strong ones are. But they did test it and they found it was fentanyl. So unsuspecting, mentally disadvantaged individual being used, his house being used to press fentanyl tablets.
And honestly, and this kind of ties into Dex.
Bonus, by the way.
Well, yeah. This kind of ties into a question Dex has, but like you expect that. I remember as a kid, we'd go party in Kelowna, and you were always my friends used to rag on me because we were 19, 20, and like it's not that we were up to no good, but we were going to engage in binge alcoholism. We were going to Kelowna to just fucking party hard, and you would at times tell me, be like, just so you know, just heads up, few places you don't want to go, few things you don't want to do, and a few people you don't want to upset in Kelowna. So watch your step. And I would tell this to my friends, be like, hey, we can't go to fucking Cheetahs. You know, my dad said that's not the spot, blah, blah, blah. And to the point where they're like, okay, you know, like Drew's got the crime beat. He knows all the organized crime. And you go to Kelowna and absolutely you'd get in spots and guys are in their cut and you just spilled a drink on the pool table and it is now time to leave. Like it's not a safe space and those things are going on, but you don't imagine it here. And I don't know if it's because you just don't see it or we just don't live those types of lives. We're not in that underclass. We're not affected by it, but social strain is a real thing. And there are people who don't have the means to provide for themselves. And so what they do is they turn to lives of crime. And there are enterprising crime lords who are making it happen right here, right under our noses. Maybe in Okotoks, probably in Okotoks, probably in your disabled cousin's basement. Like what? That's what got you. Fuck you. But okay. On that note, Dex, you had a question. Real life versus.
Oh yeah. Okay. Do you watch any like cop dramas on TV, or does that just piss you off? And is there one that's accurate to the actual experience?
Oh boy, loaded question. Because I watch a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I watch a lot of the true crime ones.
Oh, okay.
And if they're Canadian, I watch them because I've either heard of the cases, worked on the cases, or know the guys.
I know that guy.
Yeah, I mean it's a big country, but it's a small world. I can't think of the names of some of the shows off the top. Some of them I quite like. I don't like the actual character, but there was one called the Homicide Hunter, Lieutenant Joe Kenda.
Okay. Not familiar with that one.
Out of Colorado.
Okay.
Well, at least the stuff he really brags himself up, that's fine. Something Springs, Colorado. Anyways, enough to have, he's worked on enough that I'd never go to that town. he's got like so many series, right? Yeah. But at least his stuff is accurate, you know, and he doesn't beat around the bush. Evidence is evidence, and he doesn't create stuff that isn't there, and he talks about why they did this and why they did that and why you believe this. So I'll watch that one. I can't think of the names of the ones that bother me, but they are the ones that don't have a technical director.
Oh, okay.
It bugs me. It just bugs me because no, you can't do that, right? You just can't. You can't. You can't.
That case would get thrown out. As soon as
you can't. You can't fabricate evidence. That's just taboo. Right? It just doesn't work, right? And same with undercover stuff. There's some things you can do undercover. There's some things you can't. And when they portray it falsely, it bugs me. But I mean, it's entertainment value. So,
have you ever seen the first 48?
I watched that quite a bit. Yeah.
How accurate is that? Where it's like they hype up the first 48 hours. If you don't get a good lead and like chase this down in 48 hours, the case could be gone.
So the first thing you have to recognize when you're watching that is you're looking at police departments that are inundated with homicides. So it's
like 48 hours or we don't have time for it.
Because we're moving on to the next one, yeah. So for the majority of my career in homicide work, so 10 to 16 a year we'd work on. Right. So it's not the same. Yeah. It's just not the same.
Different
speed.
Timeline.
Yeah, different. You can say some of the southern states or Detroit or wherever, they are run ragged. Even Calgary, they'll go, wait, we were run ragged because we didn't have a lot of guys, but we had more than 48 hours to solve something before we had to work on another one. The most we would ever have in a weekend would be 2. Right. And then you'd have half a team going one way and half a team going another.
Yeah, whereas cities like Chicago, you can have 1,500 homicides in a year.
Sure.
And you can disappear immediately.
2 or 3 a night.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me, but it's interesting to me when I watch that, how fucking inept those investigators are at interviewing. It blows my mind. They're just no good at it. I don't know if they've never had any training or maybe their evidence rules are different down there, but it's just not the same.
So that's what infuriates you, is just watching bad police work? Maybe not infuriates, but bothers you. Yeah, not infuriates, but you're like, this. What the fuck?
I just go, you can't do that. What's going on here? But
and there is a big difference between the American system and the Canadian system.
Absolutely.
Like you talked about the Mr. Big sting, and there's lots of series on that. And it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was legal in Canada, but under certain state laws, it could be considered entrapment.
Yep.
And so it's contentious. It could be.
Well, I think in the U.S. In Canada, we have single-party consent for recording. So as long as one person in the room knows. Yeah. But in the U.S., it's usually 2-party consent, so you can't record somebody if they don't know.
Well, even with the one-party consent, you have one party consent, but you still need judicial authorization, right?
Okay.
Huh? Great question.
Thank you. Yeah. I wrote it myself.
Yeah, you're great at this. All right. So we could do this all night, and I want to, but I really want to get to the true or false.
Well, and
segment.
by the way, I always wish somebody would offer me the job as technical advisor.
On a movie set?
Yeah.
Hey,
We know people.
We're in the entertainment industry. If you are looking for a technical coordinator to make sure your show is authentic, you can reach us at raddadredemptionpodcast@gmail.com. I'll put you in touch with my father. And if you're looking for an intimacy coordinator, Dex has had sex before, and he is pretty good.
At least twice.
Yeah. So we got your bases
Well,
covered.
you could finish your career in High River where you started, because High River is Hollywood North. I was just in High River today. I always trip out. I was working in High River today.
The amount of movie sets and TV shows.
Well, yeah, and they've got that one office that permanently says like Wyoming Fish and Game, like, and that's just the decal on the window because it's a set all the time.
Yeah.
Maggie's Diner,
Yeah.
which is not a diner; it's just a set.
So I was in High River when they were filming the first Superman, so they used the Koopman house on the corner. One of the guys I played hockey with was the combine driver.
In the movie.
Quan's Grocery was where Superman worked when he wasn't working as Superman. And then there was a Richard Pryor movie. I can't remember which one it was. He was in he was a general in the army or something. Anyways, one Sunday morning I get a call. The bank alarm's going. The Bank of Commerce the alarm's going. So I jump out of bed and run down there. Well, it's a movie set, and they got scaffolding all over. They're climbing all over the bank. And they're setting all this stuff up. I said, "You guys are setting the alarm off." And this guy comes over and says, "We're shooting a movie." I said, "I don't care." And this guy comes over and says, "Sir, that's not security. He's a real policeman."
Oh,
Like, get off the bank.
yeah. Real police work must occur.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to watch shows like Last of Us. You know, you're like, oh, I've seen that.
I eat at that diner every week.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hell yeah,
Yeah, it's great when the zombies go running through Evelyn's.
yeah.
Yeah, I sit there all the time. I'm like, yeah, I had a turkey croissant last week right there.
How to write chicken sandwich.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, extra. Give me another chicken sandwich. Yeah, that's my order. Okay, I want to do the true or false because I've got all these memories, Dad, from when I was a kid, and I think I've definitely, if you know me outside the podcast, I probably shared a few of these stories. But as time goes on, you remember events. You maybe romanticize them, and I really don't know how much of this is me just thinking these things happened or this was actually going on. So I've got a true or false segment here of some we'll call them loose memories from when I was growing up, and I want you just to shed some light. Did it actually happen? Did it not happen? And if it did, how close am I? And then maybe just kind of tell us a little bit about those experiences. You okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, so true or false. Dex, play that true or false jingle.
I'm not doing jingles.
Oh. Okay, true or false. In order to be able to carry things like tasers and mace, you first must get tasered and maced.
That's true.
That's a real thing.
Yeah. Well, was for me. I've been tasered.
It's
and
just
maced.
hazing.
No,
It was just you, actually.
Yeah. I was probably the first mounted policeman to get maced, actually.
So what's they put you in a room and they're just like, all right, 3, 2, 1.
No,
hit you on 2.
No. I was involved in the sting operation and with the Edmonton City Police, and we went to arrest this guy at this apartment building for a whole bunch of break-and enters. And then the fight was on, and they went to mace him, but they maced me. And that was before the mounted police had mace, so that makes me the first mounted policeman to get maced.
There you go.
Yeah, it was by accident.
So when they do,
I didn't like it.
When they do the test after to get you to carry, did you still have to do it, or did you be like, I've been maced?
I did. I said, I've been maced. I said, okay.
And with tasering, I've again coming from memory, you kind of link arms with a dude or two, and they kind of tase you all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did, yeah. It's still 50,000 volts.
How bad does getting tased suck?
The entire group of people that I was linked with fell backwards, and I muscled through it and stayed, but I couldn't move, but I didn't fall down.
I'm not falling.
I couldn't move,
Yeah.
but I refused to fall.
Okay. And you talked about this one. So this one, buried the lead, as my good friend Dex would say. But I have to ask. So true or false, you led an undercover operation at the G8 Summit in Kananaskis, during which you had to assume an entirely different identity for nearly 9 months.
That's true.
And you lived away from home, and your alias had an excuse to come back to Okotoks. So you had a reason to be out of town on Sundays, and that's when you'd kind of come and check in and be Dad. But then when you went to Canmore, you were not Murray Hoover. You were
Yep. That's true. Yeah. I used that identity actually throughout all my undercover career, even doing drug work and the stuff I did in the States. And yeah, I used this because it's the identification that I had, the driver's license and social security card and mountain equipment co-op card.
Well, I was gonna. Oh man, fuck. So that's crazy. You were Jason Bourne. Like you have a whole different set of documents. It's crazy that they give you a SIN.
Yeah, I might still have them.
Hell yeah, got to make a break for it. But I also this persona, like and I think when you went to course on Halifax, there was some training involved, and you guys actually had to go out to different spots, and you were dyeing each other's hair and doing things to kind of throw people off. But your identity in Canmore, like I remember, because at when these things are going on, it's not like Dad can come home and talk about them. Right. It's not dinner talk. But like all of a sudden, Dad has long hair. All of a sudden,
well, it wasn't all of a sudden. It took.
It wasn't a wig.
The short hair could be all of a sudden, but
but like hemp necklaces became a thing, and at the time it was like
really stupid hats. You're Canmore, right?
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a typical Canmore resident.
Yeah. Hiking boots and stupid hats. Yeah.
But that was all under this. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so that's true. All right, true or false? This one, I feel like this can't be true, but I gotta know. True or false? We once stopped on our way up to Edmonton for a volleyball tournament so you and Mom could make a hotel room look like it was being occupied by a mob boss, including leaving a live python in the room.
It's really close, Drew. That's really close.
The live python was actually his penis.
When I was writing it, I was like, I bet you my mom and dad just went up there and banged.
So that's what we had to make. That's what we had to make the room look like. Now I'm not going to tell you how we did that. But no, it's true. The only thing is the python was already there. So
So there was a snake.
Oh yeah. So this particular scenario that I developed was we had to get this kid had killed his common law's infant daughter by accident, but he still killed her. In a fit of rage. The only thing we knew about him is that he liked snakes. We couldn't get him to play with our undercover operators. He was really lowly motivated individual. He just wasn't interested in anything. He just wanted to smoke pot and play video games. And his girlfriend had kicked him out already, but and all his friends had shunned him because he'd killed this kid, or they suspected him of killing this kid. So he had met our undercover operator and he'd gotten a ride from him, but he just wasn't really interested in doing anything with him. But we knew he had snakes and liked snakes. So I sent an undercover operator to his place and said, look, I got a problem. My boss has got a girlfriend. She's a stripper and she likes snakes and she likes to do things with snakes when they have sex. And he tells me I got to go find a snake. He says, I'm fucking terrified of them. So if I buy a snake, can you look after it for me? He says, I'm your man. They jump in the truck, they go to a pet store, and they buy a snake. And then so this kid, upon command, would deliver the snake to whatever hotel we told him to. There'd be a room key waiting for him, and he'd leave the snake in the room, supposedly so Mr. Big and his girlfriend could go up there and have sex and do whatever with the snake.
And he was the snake handler.
Mm-hmm. And then we'd leave $50 and the snake on the bed, and he'd go back and pick up the snake and his $50. But we had to make it look like there was sex in there. So yes, on the way to Grand Prairie, we stopped.
Grand Prairie.
Yeah, we stopped, and you had to do things like run the shower so it was steamy in there, get some long hair, mess up the bed, and maybe empty the mini bar. Mess up. And so yeah, that's true.
And this snake's just sitting there.
Yeah, it was in a like a handbag, and I remember your mom saying, "Well." And by the way, you're not allowed to take your wife on these undercover things. But there's no bad guys involved at the time. So she said, is there really a snake there? I said, yes. She said, I don't believe you. So I opened up the bag and she almost fainted.
Okay. So I was missing some pieces there, but I think that's actually better. I think that's actually more hardcore.
Yeah.
Man. Okay.
Oh, he did confess in the end too, by the way.
You got him.
Yep.
Yeah, good job. True or false? On Take Your Kid to Work Day in the 9th grade, your daily schedule included going to an autopsy and then reclaiming a tracking device from a white van. I thought it was a Dodge Caravan. It could be anything that had been sold off by someone that you were watching, by a perp.
Not me. That was a case out of BC, but the van had been sold to a family in Alberta. And so we were taking it out on behalf of the people from BC. The autopsy, we may have gone to the medical examiner's office, but I wouldn't have taken you into an autopsy.
Okay, I did not see a dead body.
No.
I just remember that was on the docket events. And one thing that does stand out from that day, because you come back and you do a report on it, and kids are like, I fucking went to a dental office, and I was like, we took a tracking device off a van. And you go to this location, and the RCMP, I don't think they work for the RCMP, or they don't work for major crimes, but it's like a trusted, maybe they did. It's like a trusted third party that does these types of installs.
No, they were RCMP.
They were RCMP,
Yeah.
but it's cloak and dagger. So
Yeah.
even you, when we brought the van there,
They won't tell me where the tracking device was.
yeah, you're not allowed.
No.
So there's layers of secrecy.
They
involved.
just take it out and give it to me.
Okay, we're gonna give that one false plus.
You had a way cooler take your kid to work day than I did.
What did you do?
I remember my dad took me, and he ran a business at the time, and he took me in, and like we worked at the business, doing some administrative tasks for like a couple hours, and then he took me for Chinese food, and then he's like, it sounds like a day, let's head home. And it was like noon, and like that was a very like realization for me that like dad's business isn't doing so hot.
They don't need you. You don't have things to do.
I was like, it's your own business, like you should make some cold calls or something. I was like, uh-oh. Things aren't going too good.
I got to see some gadgets.
And my report sucked. I was like, I watched my dad shuffle some papers around, and then we went to Treasures of China for lunch. And what did you do in the afternoon? My dad went home.
I got a bad grade because they're like, this didn't happen. I was like, I swear to God it happened. True or false? You once used your oldest son's Mercury Topaz, 94 I believe, in an undercover operation, which included modifying the vehicle to have a kill switch installed.
Yeah, really, really close. That's a true. It was. Do you remember I told you the bit about the one guy that killed the other guy with a rock?
Yep.
Okay, so the brother of the killer, we wanted to get into him first so he could meet our undercover operator through his brother. So he would already have credibility as somebody that...
A close connection.
Yeah. So we rented Joe's beat-up old Topaz, and I had the mechanics put a switch in it so that it would turn over, but it wouldn't start. And so then we pulled up in front of this place, and it's winter, and it stops, and it can't start it. So he goes into this house, and he says, hey guys, I can't start my car. Can I leave it here till I come back tomorrow? Yeah, sure. So he comes back the next day and works on it, can't get it started. Says, I'll be back again tomorrow. Comes back again the next day, and he gets it going just by flipping the switch, right?
Yeah.
But he takes a case of beer, and he says, I want to thank you guys for letting me park it here. So he starts drinking beer with the bad guy's brother, and that's how we got into the family. And
No way.
Yeah.
And again, at that time, there was no discussion of this. It just, I need your car. You'll get $500 out of the deal.
Oh, I said we're gonna make it so it can't run, but just by switch, yeah.
Yeah. And so when Joe got his car back, there was like a little switch, and you just kill it.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah. So true. Okay. True or false? And this kind of goes along the lines of that the camaraderie. All the boys on the force at the time. You guys like to mess with each other. You would add known aliases to criminal files to fuck with your coworkers. So the one that I remember.
Yeah, that's I know the one you're thinking of, and that was what actually wasn't me. It was Gary. Remember Gary Edgar?
I do remember. Yeah, I was
Okay,
hanging
so-
out with his sons.
So when we were stationed in the Wob,
The Wob Scompton.
yeah, there's a guy's name was it was Richard or Harold. Now look, so everybody called him Harry Dick. But when you fingerprint somebody, there's a place to put down their alias. Well,
On the card or whatever.
yeah, but you take his fingerprints and you just fill the form out. And Gary writes down Fezzy Pecker for an alias. So a couple months later, we just over the radio, he says, I need a 1029 on this individual. Like, is he wanted for anything? And this Richard Harold, look, no, not wanted for anything. Well, does he go by any other names? Well, now the operator has to say Fuzzy Pecker over there. That wasn't me. That was
okay.
But I mean, I was his boss, and I laughed.
It's a good joke.
Yeah. Okay.
Nobody's hurt.
So and I didn't really have a final true or false, but that last question kind of segued into this discussion, and this is definitely the lighthearted, the funny way to end it. So true or false? The pranks RCMP members play on each other are legendary, and there's too many that I remember from when I was a kid, but I do recall things like you would have obviously rotating vacation time because you live in Wabasca, you can't all be away. You know, you can't call in a guest teacher. So guys would have to go, they'd take their families on a 2-week vacation. And like, not necessarily the minute people would leave, but like once people were gone, like you were going to fuck with their place. And I remember that I think it was Gary went away and you guys went out and bought a bunch of like live ducks.
No, I did. I went to a Hottery colony, just bought one duck. But what happened was we'd been away on holidays. And when we came home, our entire living room was set up in our bedroom and our entire bedroom was set up in our living room. The whole thing. Like, fuck. And then don't you remember there was a broken pitcher that they had replaced?
No.
Well, it was broken before they did it. But yeah, anyways, so I got them all back one by one. But Gary's was the duck. I put a duck. I ran the water in his bathtub and put the duck in there and gave it some food. But 3 or 4 days before they came home, so it's just duck shit and feathers everywhere.
He came home to fucking duck shit.
Well, you know, his wife sent the kids in to have a bath, and they said it stinks in here. It does. Margie's going, it doesn't stink in there. You get in there and have a bath. And Billy and Alex are going, but it stinks in there. And then Margie goes in the bathroom and she's yelling, Gary, Gary, Gary. And he runs in and he phones me. He says, come and get your fucking duck. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyways, we had that duck running on the compound for the longest time. We called it Gary.
Oh, okay. There's another one that, and I've heard this story, but I again, loose memory. At the Fort Saskatchewan detachment, you would have to have one guy there overnight.
Always somebody working. Yeah.
Always somebody working. And you had, a drop ceiling, so just tiles. And you guys had pre-recorded like spooky messages.
So yeah, I had a partner. His name was Guard Bennett, and we called him Boo because he would scream when he got scared, like a 7-year-old schoolgirl. He was hilarious. But so he and I were working. I was off at 4 a.m, and he was off at 6 a.m. So morning shifts came in at 6, and I knew he wouldn't leave the office after I left. So what I did is this is how old I am. I took a 90-minute cassette tape, and I ran it all the way to the end, and I made a whole bunch of ghost noises like, you're not alone. God, you're not alone. And then I rewound it. And then I got up on his desk and I hit it in the ceiling above his desk and I pressed play. And so it's going to run for 45 minutes on one side, right? So it gets to the very end, and after about like 42 minutes, these noises are going to start. So that's what happened. And he tells me about it the next day. He says, I'm sitting there and I'm having my yogurt and I hear, you're not alone.
The place is haunted.
Yeah. So anyways, he's running around with his gun out trying to figure out what's going on. Then finally he says, it's fucking Hoover. He's hiding in the ceiling, because I had done that once before. Anyways, he finally got up enough nerve to stand on his desk, and he was going to reach, and he said, no, I reach up there, he's going to grab me. But then anyways, then the tape recorder went beep, beep, beep. And
There's various other like mouse traps underneath the desk. Is there any prank that stands out from your time on the force?
Well, the mousetrap one was good because Thunder Crunch chips were brand new and he couldn't keep his hands off them. Same guy. So I got a thing of Thunder Crunch chips and I split it down the middle. I put it at the coffee table and then I put a mousetrap in the middle of the chips. So at that point, we wouldn't just set a trap. We set a tape recorder. So you could hear him coming because he had the big keys. Ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. Oh, chips. Russell. And he's screaming. And then, there's chips all over the floor, so we can't deny we got them. But I think one of the, there's 2 more I want to tell you about.
Yeah, please.
It's raining one night, and I was off at 4, and he was working till 6. And I went and hid in the back of his police car with a gorilla mask and a rain jacket. And I'm just lying down on the seat. And he gets in the car and he's driving out of the parking lot. And I just sat up. So I'm just sitting in the back of his police car. The rain, gorilla mask, black raincoat. And you could just see him, and you could actually see the hair on his back of his neck stand up. And he doesn't want to look, but he knows he's not alone. Anyways, he finally does turn around and his eyes got as big as saucers and he starts screaming. And he slams on the brakes and he's trying to get out, but he's got a seatbelt on and he's still screaming. And then another time he was going on holidays. He didn't know
It's all the same guy.
It sounds like bullying.
There's so many of them.
It's all the same guy.
He was recently divorced, and he'd been I don't remember which one it was, but one of those fad weight loss clinics. He wanted to lose a bunch of weight because he couldn't wait to get back home to go to the clubs he used to go to before he was married, so he could get laid.
As you do.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
As we will.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Boston pizza.
No issue with that. But he left on his holiday. He lost some weight. I got into his locker and I got all his pants and I took him down to the dry cleaner and had them all taken in an inch. And just hung him back up in his locker. So he came back to work. He goes, "Fuck! I knew I gained some weight, but holy fuck,
My pants don't fit."
yeah."
Oh man.
Oh, and then there was a time they tried to get me.
Yeah. Did they?
Yeah.
Tried.
No. I had an informant, a paid informant that was working for me, and his house got broken into by two guys that he'd ripped off for sold them some fake drugs or something. So they went in with baseball bats and threatened to beat up him and his dad and stole their TV. So we get called to go to the complaint, and I say, I can't go, guys. I got a bit of an interest in this. I'm just, and they kind of figured it out. They kind of go, oh, okay, all right. So we'll handle it. Well, we all smoked back in those days, and we could smoke in the office. They had taken a shotgun shell apart and filled my ashtray full of gunpowder. Well, they had this guy in the interview room, and he wants to have a cigarette. So they let him have a cigarette. They didn't have an ashtray, so they ran out and grabbed an ashtray. Well, they grabbed the one they filled with gunpowder.
Oh no way! So as soon as he puts it in,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
so there's an element of is there hazing? Is there hazing that happens? Like when you like
There was in the day, but I wouldn't call it hazing. And the thing with the practical jokes like that is we only did it to people we liked. I mean, if you did it to somebody you didn't like, that's harassment. It's always going to be harassment. And maybe it's harassment even if you do it. Well, yeah, it was harassment with Wayne Pernack. Yeah. Every self-help thing you could find on a matchbook cover, from dressmaking to herbal cure for male impotence and stuff, we just would fill it out and send it in and get all this shit sent to his home address.
and he has no idea why he's getting it all.
No, but then one day in the office, he's complaining about it to me, and I said, I'm not sure about this, but Jim Dyack did that to somebody a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's him or not.
You threw him under the bus.
No, it wasn't Jim.
I know. Yeah, you.
No, he's the boss I had that I fucking hated.
Oh.
Did you ever put peanut butter on the phone?
Oh, I knew it was coming.
Peanut butter? No.
We fucking Tom.
Yeah.
And he's always telling us about fire hall antics, and some of them, admittedly, are pretty unbelievable. And he's got this the one, and I guess it's like a common thing. It's a funny thing, is I'm imagining it like the fucking bat phone, like a red flashing phone, but it's obviously like just the phone. They're getting a dispatch. They're getting called out to some emergency, and what they do is they put peanut butter on the inside of the phone. And then so Tom tells these stories about like guy after guy answering the phone and being like, like peanut butter in my face. And we always razz him about it. We're like, okay, who doesn't look at the phone? Like how are these?
How do you not notice it's covered in peanut butter?
This phone is covered in peanut butter. These firemen, just all these really buff dudes just smacking themselves in the face with peanut butter. And so we kind of called them out. And we're saying, like, that's bullshit. It's not even that funny. It's not a real thing. And then at his wedding, obviously there was a bunch of firemen there, and they're a type, right? These big muscular
tall
men.
handsome dudes.
Tall handsome dudes. And so we were kind of shooting the shit with a group of them, and we'd had some drinks, and so I decided I can't remember if it was me or Dex or who it was, but someone decided to ask this one neutral third party that didn't know Tom. We had to be like, we got to know about the peanut butter phones. Like, are all you firemen just not looking at phones, or you just like you buy into the prank? Like, what is the thing with the peanut butter phone? Does that really happen? What's the fucking deal? And he's like deadpan. He's like, well, when lives are on the line, you answer the phone. There's no hesitation. And that was like the end of the conversation. We're like,
he was so serious about it.
Yeah. But that's what it is. So it's whatever. It's that phone. It's it's the cat in the tree phone, and they gotta get it out.
So guard, the same guy that I was playing all those jokes on, he wants to play a joke on the steno. So he takes the phone and he takes Scotch tape and he tapes down the plunger. So when you lift it up, it doesn't come up. It just keeps ringing.
Oh,
like the old phones.
Yeah.
Which is fine and dandy, but that's a complaint line. And it's I think it was an Easter Monday, right? So there's nobody working. So she goes to another phone and uses it and calls the detachment commander. Says, my phone's not working. I pick it up and it just keeps ringing. He says, well, you better tell us and get him out. So they came out and took the tape off. $300 overtime bill the guard had to pay.
Man, this poor guy, you could catch the tape on the phone. Oh. Well, that was good. That was lighthearted. That was a good end to what was a really incredible episode, man.
Yep.
Dex.
Thank you.
I put you on the spot. Dex, what'd you think? It's my dad. I love him. Solved a lot of murders.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming to my basement and sharing some stories.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
No, we appreciate it, man.
That's good.
It's really something I've always, not only growing up with it, but just wanted to sit down and hear you tell the whole story. And I know that there's no way you could have told everything in that amount of time. But for even giving us a glimpse and spending time with us, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
What's up with us? What are we doing?
We're going camping.
Yeah, we're going camping. Last year we wanted to bring out a bunch of equipment and try and do like a live by the campfire a camping episode. And then we did a whole bunch of ridiculous things and ended up having a wicked vacation episode in post anyway. So I'd say look forward to our second annual summer vacay report.
We're way more equipped to like actually record like on the go now.
We could maybe actually do that.
We could.
Okay.
We probably won't.
No,
I'll bring all the stuff like I did last year, and we'll never touch it. But.
We're not motivated. Let's try and do it.
Okay. All right. Well, see you when we're back from summer vacay.
Yeah, send us an email.
Bye.
Bye.